of May, the chant liberation. We gather every year in the month of May, 'cause we are one black nation. And we celebrate all our victory and prepare for each new fight. We vanquish you all down pressure, whether black, yellow, brown or white. 'Cause black struggle international in this year time, and we want liberation now. After we struggle, I want in North America, me say we want liberation now. After we struggle, I want in the Caribbean, me say we want liberation now. After we struggle, I want in Canada, me say we want liberation now. After we struggle, I want in South America, me say we want liberation now. After we struggle, I want in Europe, me say we want liberation now. After we struggle, I want in Britain, man, me say we want liberation now. After we struggle, I want in Asia, me say we want liberation now. After we struggle, I want in Australia, me say we want liberation now. And so we trot down the road and it a cause sensation. Behind the colors of the new black nation, I step into the valleys in the shadow of the wicked, just a chant liberation. Tell it to the nation, what we want to see is Africa strong and free. We sing it in a reggae song all the time. Say what is to be has got to be. Africa shall be free. Who are we? Africans. What do we want? Freedom. And we say, how do we get it? Fight. We must fight to defend the truth and defend the right. It's Africa Liberation Day. The true black spirit is here to stay. Before this power, no one life is dear. Freedom come, what me? Freedom come, what me? And the wife them who were standing by were watching fearful, wondering, saying, who are these people who walk so proud? Who are these people who chant so loud? Are these not they who live in darkness and to whom we have given light? Are these not the sons and daughters of the savage who we have taught to read and write? Have we not taught them our history and honor them with our culture? And brought them into our great house to serve and stand at our great table? Have we not granted them what they deserve? Well, African proverbs say that only those who can listen can learn, and who can hear go and feel. We are the sheep of Jah pasture, and now we shall inherit our land. And we are also the lion, against who none shall stand. We are the sons and daughters of the original nation that gave to this world first knowledge of civilization. We were the victim of the white savage to whom we stretch out our hand, and not knowing they came to plunder, kill and slave our people and destroy our land. So now we step it down the road and it a cause sensation. Behind the colors of the new black nation and a one chant liberation. And we say, who are we? Africans. What do we want? Freedom. And we say, how do we get it? Fight, we must fight. We defend the truth and defend the right. This is Africa Liberation Day. The true black spirit is here to stay. Before this power, no one life is dear. Freedom come, what me? A freedom come, what me? A freedom come, what me? What me?
You know, hold on there. 1 second. So I just realized I couldn't be heard. All right. So let me start again. 10-9 be thankful unto the mother, father, creative life force of the universe. Kudzai Mudzimo Mokoro. Give praises unto our great ancestors. Abibi Tumi, Abibi Fahodi, African power and African liberation for all African people. We're back again. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Look at impromptu, conversation. And yeah, there's no particular rhyme or reason behind this. I had some time, so I thought, you know what, let me go live again for the people. There's a few people ask me to go live more than once a week. You know what I'm saying? And I may not be able to do that again for a little while still. So, when they are again, yeah. So I'm sure I can be heard audibly now. And so yeah, open house, isn't it? Feel free to come through. I'm gonna share the link right now. Yeah, I'm sharing the link right here now. And anybody who want to come through can come through. I don't have a particular conversation that I have established, although I do. I've been on an Amos Wilson vibes today. Yeah, and I'll explain why in a second. But yeah, we left on some Amos with some vibration. So I've called the show, asked me what ask me anything. But you don't have to ask me anything. You can come and talk your own things if you want to. Everything is good, everything is blessed. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, so we'll see how it goes, kings and queens. And if it ends up with me talking for the whole time, then I'll just let it go. We're just working with the vibes and seeing how the thing goes. Digging up to Anthony McFahale in the building. Hold on there. Right, so the link is pinned to the top of the chat. The link is in the chat. And so yeah, anything can go on. Yeah, anything can go on. And so I have been saying that I am going to. By the way, if you're asking me a question in the chat, please at gotkushTV. Yeah, please at gotkushTV, so I know it's a question for me, just so I can distinguish between the conversation that is taking place in the chat and the conversation that is directed for to be read out, question or comment. It doesn't have to be a question, okay? But I want to share some sacred wisdom from the sacred gospel of Hunho Ubuntu. And as I said, I'm going to be doing every show just so that we tap into and connect with the wisdom of our ancestors, yeah? And so, for those who are not aware, the sacred gospel of Hunho Ubuntu documents the wisdom traditions of our ancient ancestors in southern Africa. And the book was written by a brother from Zimbabwe. Well, the book was compiled, I should say, by a brother from Zimbabwe. But the concept of Hunho Ubuntu, they both mean the same thing. So you will often hear Ubuntu means translated as peoplehood. Yeah, I am because we are. In essence, though, however, Ubuntu is peoplehood because it is in fact the law that governs the universe. Yeah, to put it in short terminology. And Hunho is just the same word but spoken in the Shona language. So Ubuntu, you'll find that in Kiswahili, Zulu, Xhosa, and a few other languages. Hunho is the same word but in Shona. Okay, and so I'm gonna read a few, verses from the chapter on the great law. Yeah. And it says, what is the great law? The great law is a subtle yet mighty power, a power composed of love, truth, peace, and happiness, an ever present power revealed yet concealed, revealed in that every culture abides under this law perpetually, functioning within it. It is concealed in that few recognize this obvious fact. The great law is love, truth, peace, happiness, and an infallible law. Hunho Ubuntu Ma'at, the great law, is an infinite center of hidden power, seal of the living God, and in an ingenious means by which the creator governs her creation. The law is also the means by which all creation duly returns to its source. No creature exists outside the reach of the law, for all creatures are imbued with Hunho Ubuntu. Hunho Ubuntu Ma'at is inherent within each and every creature. It is that light of love, truth, peace, happiness existing within the heart of every creature, entering the physical realm. There is no place in which the law is not, filling all space, all time. It is called great. Above and beyond corruption, it is called true. Impartial and unconditional, it is called pure. One who understands this law verily enters the radiant presence of true being. Such is the wisdom of our ancestors. Hail to the power of the word. Yeah. And so, we're just going to, tapping into the wisdom traditions of our ancient ancestors with such readings, brothers and sisters. So we're going to tap into that every show in one way or another. Yeah. So I was going to engage, in fact, a bit of a video from Nana Amos Wilson. Yeah. But I've seen that there's a question in the chat already. And this is from American Royalty. Interesting name. And it says, how are relationships between Caribbeans and Somalis in the UK? It's an interesting question. So for a bit of background, let's start here. The majority of the Somali community that is in the UK at this point came over and or are the children of those who came over in the 1990s as a result of the Civil War. Yeah. And the Somali community tended to live amongst each other. I grew up in East London, and East London was one of the hotbeds for the Somali community. And so they, had quite a presence. Yeah. Do you know what I'm saying? They weren't necessarily because of that, known to be socially embedded within what might be called the established African Caribbean community in the UK. Okay. And that was for a number of different reasons. Most of the African Caribbean community in the UK were Christian. And so the Somali community being Muslim, there were some distinctions there. And then, there's some of this talk that even takes place today in terms of the extent to which Africans from Somalia consider themselves to be black or not, in communion and in brotherhood and sisterhood with Africans from elsewhere in the African diaspora, and that includes Africans from other parts of the continent. Yeah. And so in my humble experience, most Somali brothers and sisters do not have a problem with identifying with other African brothers and sisters, and some do adopt and embrace the terminology black and some don't, and there's an overabundance of emphasis on those who do not on social media. Okay. But I think that among the younger generations, there is much more cohesion. I think that there's much more understanding. My son, goes to school with a number of Somali children, and we have good relations with their parents. Yeah, there's definitely an identification with each other in that regard. Yeah. So I would say that the relations between quote unquote Caribbeans, or I prefer to say Africans from the Caribbeans, and the Somali community in the UK is an amicable one. Yeah. I wouldn't regard it to be the closest of close relationships, across the board, but there's generally no beef, no antagonism. You know what I'm saying? And yeah, I remember being in college actually, and this debate happening with, I think it was a brother or two from West Africa and a brother from Somalia, and they asked the brother, do you consider yourself black? And the brother was confused. It was, like, of course, you know what I'm saying, and those kind of things there, you know what I'm saying? So yeah, so later on, I got to meet brothers and sisters from Somalia who have a different opinion, and I've heard Somalis even debate that subject among themselves. Yeah. And so yeah, I hope that answers your question in short. you know. But yeah, kings and queens, so you can do the same. Yeah, ask me anything, and or feel free to click the link and come forward to join the panel. The link is pinned to the top of the chat. The link is pinned to the top of the chat, or it's just in the chat, so you can come through and raise anything where you want. So you can ask from the platform, or you can ask from the chat, and you don't even have to ask. You can raise your own point and just say, "This is on my head. This is what we want to talk about." That's the Zivanayi vibration family. I got another one in here, which is coming from Anthony, and he says, "I've recently been studying words in the Shona language and the Shona traditional culture. Regarding, and forgive me because my Shona is not the best. Nemaro." Pafadzo, Nemaro Pafadzo, meaning peace and blessings. Yep. So that fads, yeah, you'll find that in a lot of terminology. So my first name is Tafadzwa, yeah, and it means we have been made happy. Yes, we are pleased, yeah, as in my parents were pleased to have me, so to speak. And so that fads, you'll find that formation in a lot of words that mean things like blessings and happiness and so on and so forth. Yeah. And then he goes on to say, my name is pronounced Macfell. Okay. My question is, are you familiar with the work of Dr. Bobby E. Wright and his concepts of menticide and psychopathic racial personality? I have read psychopathic racial personality. I have not read menticide, but I am familiar with Bobby E. Wright and those who worked with him and were inspired by him as well. Yeah, he has a very good speech, in fact, on YouTube. But Bobby E. Wright is one of the I shouldn't say I haven't read menticide. I haven't read menticide cover to cover. Yeah. But yeah, he's one of the stalwarts. Yeah. There are a few people that, you know, I think about in terms of because Bobby E. Wright died young. Yeah. And there are a few people that I think about that how much would things be different if certain ones had lived and live to work and collaborate a bit more with each other. Bobby E. Wright is one such individual. Nana Amos Wilson is another. Yeah. And Bobby E. Wright, I would love to have seen what would have happened if Bobby E. Wright and Amos Wilson would have been able to work more together. That would have been a mad combination. I also think the same thing about Bobby E. Wright and Mama Frances Cress Welsing, partly because they were involved in similar things. So Bobby E. Wright established an institution of mental health, yeah, for African people. I believe in Chicago. I believe he lived in Chicago. And Mama Frances Cress Welsing was, involved in similar work, yeah, addressing the mental health needs of African people and developing frameworks to do so. So yeah, Bobby E. Wright is a very, very serious man. And so thank you for raising his spirit, today. Yeah, this evening on this very impromptu live that we're doing right about now. We give thanks, we give thanks, we give thanks, we give thanks. You know what I'm saying? And so yeah, kings and queens, giving thanks to Anthony McFell for them question Dessa and for sharing the good Shona vibration. You know what I'm saying? I love the Shona language. I love African languages in general, but I've been exposed to the Shona language for a very long time, and I love to learn new things about it. I love to, to challenge myself with the pronunciation of the words. It's one of them things, kings and queens, that, trying to learn African languages, you have to throw yourself into it, and challenge yourself to pronounce, yeah, because really the words are often not that difficult. It's just that you're not used to saying them, yeah. And so let's get over them hurdles there. You know what I mean? For those who are just joining us, yeah, it's a bit of an impromptu live. The link is in the chat. You can feel free to come through and interact with I, or you can feel free to just stay away there. You know what I'm saying? And ask a question or make a comment in the chat. If you choose to do the latter, please at gotkushTV, yeah? So I know, so you're talking to me. And in the meantime, between time, so I've been on yesterday when I was speaking on the issue of decolonization, I mentioned an Amos Wilson speech. yeah, that he has, that I've watched many times, where he encourages us to analyze, yeah, when things hit the media, like what is the purpose of this particular um yes, I sorry, just to come back to the chat. Yes, I am aware of this fact. Yeah, I am aware of this fact. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So I give thanks for that, Anthony. Yeah. So I mentioned this speech, yeah, from Amos Wilson. And it prompted me to go and listen to the speech today, basically. You know what I mean? And I also, doing that led me to go and reread most of a chapter in the Blueprint for Black Power. Yeah, and it's the chapter on social and cultural origins of power. Yeah, and this is a subject, power, that we need to be more attentive to as African people. Yeah, in my humble estimation. All right. And I think we will gain a lot more understanding and overstanding about certain things, yeah, if we engage this conversation from a position of power, yeah, considering the power dynamics in all things. All right. And one of the areas of power that we often miss is this element of culture and identity. And if you know me, you know that quite a stickler, yeah, for this particular area of our development. I'm into the identity of African people and its purpose, yeah, the purpose for which we develop it. Okay. And so one of the things that comes out of identity inherently is when you identify with other people, the extent to which this affects your understanding of yourself as an individual. And in this particular message, he delves into that. And so just randomly, yeah. And when there's another question or a comment, you can feel free to ask it. But I'm just going to engage this particular, speech from Amos Wilson, and maybe read a couple of excerpts from the book as well. But this was just on my meditation today, so I'm gonna share it with Uno. And yeah, you know what I mean, let's get into some of Amos Wilson. You know what I'm saying? It's a man that has given me a lot of inspiration and understanding over the years, and I encourage everybody to listen to everything, yeah, where him say and deliver. You know what I'm saying? Everything, I read everything where him write. All right. So for those who are just joining us again, it's a bit of an impromptu live. It's random. You can ask me anything you want to ask me. You can raise any points that you want to raise, yeah, either by clicking the link or typing in the chat. And if you type in the chat, please at gotkushTV. And so we've had a few questions already. And for now, I am just going to engage, and indulge in the wisdom of Nana Amos Wilson and share my thoughts on what he's saying with you. Okay? Bless.
Laws and the other laws passed. We were fit to be free at last, and yet we look up, and where are we? Suffering, still talking about what? The miseducation of our children, still talking about criminality in our communities, still talking about disease running rampant, still talking about poverty and unemployment. It was, as the French says, the more things change, the more they what? Remain the same. We begin to realize then that this freedom of consumption was not liberation. You have to recognize then, and we must recognize that there's a difference in class consciousness and individualized consciousness. And what is going on here today is an attempt to impose on Black people an individualized consciousness and to make us believe that by being totally free and disconnected as individuals, we will be free as a people. That is the very opposite of what is going to occur.
So, this stood out to man, yeah, because I'm always interested in how we define culturally and personally, yeah, and how that relates to our relative power in the world. I look at how people identify and how that relates and manifests itself in their relative power. And there are many definitions for power. You know, some say power is the capacity to define reality and have others respond to your definition as if it was their own. Another definition for power is the capacity to define phenomena and have it act in a desired manner. Yeah. And both those two definitions of power, you know, power is the capacity to effect your will. Yeah, you know, so let's use those three definitions of power to guide our, you know, meditation. Yeah, collective meditation we are engaging in right now. Yeah. And so I'm interested in that, right? And the extent to which in, you know, the society, yeah, British society, Western society, we are encouraged to see ourselves fundamentally as individuals. All right, individuals. This individualized consciousness, and individualized consciousness that can be defined as individualism. Okay, individualism. Yeah, individualism. All right. So then the question becomes, what is the foundation of power, or what are the foundations of power? How do you affect power? Yeah. And when it comes to concepts like the self, what are we discussing as the self? Is the self the individual? Is the self the collective? Is the self both? Yeah. That is an essential component of understanding these dynamics. And if the self is both, which of these selves, or between, what is the relationship between these selves? Yeah, individual self or or collective self, and power. Okay, is power manifested and effected on the level of the individual, or is power manifested and effected on the level of the collective? Yeah, very, you know, important question that we have to ask and answer. All right, and Nana Amos Wilson does a you know, a good job of exploring some of those dynamics in this particular vibration. Yeah.
The more we push for our own unique individual freedom, the more we will come under the domination and oppression of others as a group. There is no ultimate individual freedom, ladies and gentlemen, as Black people, if there is not group freedom. The powerless individual is not seen as an individual anyway. That is why we talk about what? Stereotyping. That is why the slave master, our master calls us what? Field hands. Not individuals, workers, laborers, because there's what? A category of people there. We only bother to individualize those who are powerful. Individual freedom is made possible by group freedom and by group power. It is the power of the group that provides room for individual expression.
So there's another speech where he speaks about the extent to which being an individual is an illusion. Yeah, but one of the paradoxes, yeah, involved with this concept of the individual is that the individual only makes sense within the context of a collective. Yeah, without other people, the concept of the individual is redundant. Like, it's a non-issue. Yeah. So what is the point of the individual without other quote unquote individuals to relate to? Does it mean anything? Yeah. I say no man is an island. Yeah. You know what I mean? All right. But even more importantly here, what he's actually saying, and this is something that, you know, when we hear a conversation about I know, black death in custody. Yeah, the police kill somebody in the black community. Yeah, or some black individual, yeah, has been charged with some crime upon the television, and the extent to which the deeds of that individual are projected upon the collective of African people. Yeah. And then you have a dynamic in which, for example, when and then juxtaposed to that dynamic, the same is not said here. For example, the white majority. All right. So when a white man commits a crime, it's a white man committing a crime. Okay. And so the idea there is that there is a power dynamic that allows us to not project pathology on the white community, quote unquote, based upon the individual acts of certain white people, whereby that is done with African people. And what Emerson Watson is saying here is that that reality persists because of the fact that we exist in a condition of relative powerlessness in relation to our so-called white counterparts, yeah, quote unquote. Okay, all right. So there's that, yeah. And this is demonstrated also by the fact that popular white media discourse picks and chooses when it wants to recognize Africans as a collective and as a cultural group. When it comes to issues of subjugation and or issues of liberation, yeah, when it comes to addressing issues of subjugation, the discourse in popular white media will seek to individualize the African, yeah. But when it wants to pathologize the African, it suddenly recognizes the African as a collective cultural entity. One of the major examples of this in popular discourse today, as far as my observation is concerned, is this idea of the number one crisis in the black community being the crisis of absent fathers and single parent headed household, more specifically single mother headed households. When it comes to that particular talking point, the same people that talk about the individual, and there's no such thing as group and collective and so on and so forth, speak of us as a collective for the purpose of imposing that pathology, because they need to find an explanation for the dysfunctionality within the black community that does not take into consideration the oppressive nature of the society in relation to African people. And so they make it an issue of black culture, and sometimes they even distinctivize the particular groups, yeah. So then they're able to now not just identify black people as a group, but the subgroups among black people. So they'll separate, for example, as they do in the UK, black Africans from black Caribbeans, right? And say this that exists among black Caribbeans does not exist among black Africans, yeah. They're able to identify groups, but all of this reasoning is designed to shield and protect the society and the system, or steer us away from engaging in an analysis of the society and the system in relation to some of the problems that we're trying to solve. Okay, so there's that hypocrisy, that contradiction that takes place, yeah, within the context of our modern day experience. But what Nana Amos Wilson here is saying is that the individual is only really seen as an individual when the group that that individual belongs to is able to effect and manifest group power. Outside of that, who cares about your individuality? Yeah. All right. Let's take in the nana. You know what I'm saying? By the way, family, for those who are just joining, yeah, look at Impromptu Live. Of course, they ask me anything. You don't have to ask me anything, but you can if you want to, either from the chat or from the panel. The link is already in the panel. I'll share it again. You don't have to wait for me to finish. Yeah. You know what I mean? You don't have to wait for me for Don got through Amos Wilson to come through. Feel free to come through at any point you wish. And I'm answering all questions, brothers and sisters. Yeah. And considering all comments. So you don't have to ask a question, you can make a comment, just raise a point. And you know what I'm saying, feel free to do so. All right. So yeah, it did it, kings and queens. If you want to come through, you can come through. And if you are asking a question or making a comment from the chat, as always, please at gotkushTV so we can see it and know so you want it read out. All right. Let me go back to Nana Amos Wilson.
Powerless groups do not have individual expression and are not perceived as individual. If you want to get the maximum of individual expression and freedom, you must maximize your group power and strength in the world. Quickly here, quoting Michael Parenti, businessmen collectively constitute the most class-conscious group in American society. As a class, they are more highly organized, more easily mobilized, have more facilities for communication, are more like-minded, and are more accustomed to stand together in defense of their privileges than any other group. And yet this is the group that depends on the consumption of our people. The ruling class is different from the subordinate classes, not only in terms of possessing more wealth. See, we like to think that rich people are rich only because they have more money. Watch that. See, we like from on the consumption of our people. And yet this is the group that depends on the consumption of our people. The organized, Michael Parenti, businessmen collectively constitute the most class-conscious group in American society. As a class, they are more highly organized, more easily mobilized, have more facilities for communication, are more like-minded, and are more accustomed to stand together in defense of their privileges than any other group.
So notice what he said there, yeah. And by the way, let me say, because I did see at gotkushTV. Let me get to that quickly. At gotkushTV. All right, no problem. Take your time. There's no rush. But yeah, as I said, you don't have to wait for me for come through. The link is in the chat, so feel free to come through, ask a question at any point, raise a point at any point, and or you can use the chat feature. If you want to stay in the chat, yeah, this at gotkushTV. If you're doing so, I want to say blessings to Melanated Goddess, you know what I'm saying? So yeah, man, big up yourself, make a reason. All right. So yeah, this is an interesting point to me. He's quoting a guy called Michael Parenti, and he's saying that the business community in America represent the most class conscious, yes, of any other group. Yeah, so they tend to act in each other's interests. They have collective interest that they tend to act on behalf of. Okay. And so they're able to mobilize people and resources to ensure that things are done within American society in ways that suit their interests. Okay. So even he's given here an example of political power, essentially. Okay, but political power being enacted by a particular group of people within a society. All right, we're gonna take a look more at this.
And yet this is the group that depends on the consumption of our people. The ruling class is different from the subordinate classes, not only in terms of possessing more wealth. See, we like to think that rich people are rich only because they have more money. Watch that. And more power and more prestige. But more importantly, in terms of their ownership of the means of production, and their concern with production and their desire to conserve, expand, and increase these factors. The rich own the means of production and concern themselves with maintaining that ownership and expanding that ownership and controlling that ownership. This is a very important difference between rich and poor. It's just not more money and less money. This ownership and these concerns on the part of the ruling group induces in them a class consciousness, a group solidarity and action orientation, markedly different from their lower class counterparts. Under capitalism, ruling class power and wealth is to a very significant degree founded on the consumerism of the subordinate classes, and consequently the subordinate classes must be socialized into consumerism, not socialized into production, but socialized into what? Consumption. They are marketing.
So prior to that, he was making the point that that to a significant degree, the civil rights movement, in America was a movement for consumer rights, being able to buy where other people are allowed to buy, being able to live where other people are allowed to live, which again indicates the purchasing of houses, and so on and so forth. Okay, and so we're looking at how we're socialized. There are certain classes within society that are socialized to produce, with the consciousness of producing, and then there are others who are socialized to consume what others produce. And so this creates a political social environment which relates to power, because if there are those who produce and those who consume what others produce, it suggests that power lies inordinately on the side of the producers, at the expense of the consumers, or let's just say at least not on the side of the consumers. I'm going to pause the wisdom of Nana Amos Wilson because we have our first panelist. Coffee, go ahead.
Yo, respect. You can hear me?
Yeah, as well as the Babylon who are run you down in the background.
Yeah, apologize for that still. Some people are do some construction next door, The economy booming. The economy booming, So
indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed.
All right. The first thing, I like how you play Amos Wilson now because I'm talking about economics and concepts dealing with economics. All right, so the last shall be the first. You mentioned something about power lies with the producer at the expense of the consumer. All right, so that's the first fallacy right there. In a market economy, power lies with the consumer. The producer is responding to the consumer. The entrepreneur is a service person. He provides a service. You understand? That's what entrepreneurship is all about. Remember, I said Gavi was into shipping, and shipping is a very big important service. So the entrepreneur is responding to the producer, to the demands, and the successful entrepreneur is the one who can successfully anticipate consumer preferences and therefore reap a profit by producing what the market wants. So in a market economy, the ultimate power lies with the consumer. The entrepreneur is the server.
Question.
Sure.
If what you're saying is true, what is the point of advertising?
The point of advertising is to convince the consumer to buy your product.
But if the product is already being produced because of the desire of the consumer, why does the consumer need to be convinced? Your argument would suggest that the consumer has already made up its mind, and the producer is simply providing what the consumer has already decided that the consumer wants. Therefore, advertising would be surplus to requirement.
Okay, so the consumer has already made up their mind in terms of what they want. For instance, I want an efficient means of communication. i.e. a cell phone. You understand? But there are the entrepreneur provides the cell phone. But in a market economy where there's low barriers or no barriers to entry, you're going to have competitors. And in a competitive market, which is a capitalistic market, you're going to have people bidding away those consumers, bidding away those scarce dollars out there. They're running down the consumer. So therefore, the consumer say, I want X at a low price and high quality.
When did
Therefore,
the consumer say this? When did the consumer say we need cell phones?
By buying cell phones. That's the signal they're saying.
Sorry, and how
by
does,
making cell phone production profitable? That's the signal consumers saying.
Now we're dealing with chicken and egg. The consumer says, I want cell phone by buying cell phone, but the fact that there's a cell phone to buy means that the cell phone was already produced.
All right, no, the consumer wants.
And I think we're also missing the essential point here, yeah? That the capacity to consume, okay, is a social, has a role within the social fabric, yeah? So essentially, all people are consuming something, okay? But not all people are producers of something. And so there is a relationship in a society between production and power, yeah? So what power are you suggesting, especially given what Nana Amos Wilson has laid out here? The consumer has. The consumer has the power to do what?
To withhold money from whichever entrepreneur is selling a product. The consumer money. Is
this is a good point. This is a good point. So to withhold money, yeah, okay. So the consumer has the capacity to withhold money, okay, right? That's because that's a form of power, right? Okay, to withhold money. All right, okay. What power does the producer have within a society?
All right, so before we go, let me clear up certain things so people don't misunderstand. Technically, everybody is a producer. You cannot go out and consume, or I can't go out and buy a cell phone of my choosing without having the money. I cannot therefore have the money without producing something on the market that people want. So
which
therefore,
from a consumer point of view, which what do you produce that gives you?
I could do many things. I could be an accountant. I could be a teacher. I could be an actuarial scientist. I could be a doctor. I could be a janitor. Anybody that purchases things, anybody that works is a consumer and a producer. So to kind of
a consumer of something, but we're talking about power. Okay, let's put it this way.
It's a misnomer to have a dichotomy between a sharp dichotomy between producer and consumer, and say that one is getting rich at the expense of the other. That's a Marxist conceptualized.
No one said anything about getting rich. We're talking about dynamics of power.
But Amos Wilson is saying that consumption.
And the fact that and what he's saying is that there are people in a society, or there are classes in a society that are producers. Yes, they produce for themselves. Yes, and others. And there are those who simply consume what others produce. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
So
but you can't consume without producing something yourself.
There's a dynamic. Well, so production is what?
This is the mercantilist fallacy, you know.
Sorry. Yeah, let's slow the conversation down. What are you define production?
Production is the generation of goods and services that people want on the market, that people desire. Creation of value.
By virtue of having a job, you're saying I'm a producer.
Yes.
Do I produce my job?
No, you don't. That's where the capitalists come in. The capitalist is the one that
on. So if I don't produce my job, what exactly am I producing?
No, you are a worker and I am a capitalist. I have an idea. Let me explain. Before you jump in, let me just answer your question now.
Between the capitalist and the worker, who produces the job?
I am answering your question, brethren. Just calm down, man. You are the worker. I am the capitalist. I organize the means of production, which is land, labor, and capital. I have an idea of producing a product, and I need your labor. I need X kind of labor. You have X kind of labor. So therefore, I hire you to help me to produce wealth, to produce value for other people who also produce.
So hold on. So you hire me to help you produce wealth.
Yes, and right. you accept.
One second. I am. So one second. Let's get this clear. I am a tool in your productive capacity.
Yes.
Right. So if I'm a tool in your productive capacity, how am I a producer in that regard? What makes me a producer?
Because I am also your tool in your goals. I have goals and you have goals. So therefore, you hold on. Well, let me finish now. Let me just clarify, because this have to clear up
your wealth, right?
Let me just.
One second. So there's a difference here between wealth, yes, and consumption, capacity for consumption. Okay, so if it was simply, I am accessing means of consumption, as is the capitalist, then that would make sense, right? But there is something of value that the capitalist achieves beyond what I am achieving in this relationship. I am achieving a wage, yes, a wage that allows me to consume things that other capitalists produce.
Yes.
Okay? Right. So there's a again, as we was outlining, there's a class dynamic here. There's a group of producers that produce things. Yes. And these producers want everybody to buy for them things. And so they will buy a few other people.
And every laborers want capitalists to choose them.
This capitalist over here is going to employ a number of laborers and give them a wage so that they can go and buy the things that other capitalists produce.
No, I never said that. I didn't say that.
Oh, that's not
can I chip in?
No. The capitalists. Hold on. Let me clear this up, no man. I am saying that I have goals as a capitalist. You have goals as a laborer. I want your labor and you want my wages. So therefore, all right. You know why you were messing. Go on through. Make your speech and go.
I noticed here that your categories are immutable, right? So in the sense of the fact that there are laborers and then there are capitalists, yeah, and this is how things are defined. But I'm supposed to act as though the relationship, the power dynamic here is the same. Yeah, the power dynamic between the laborer and the capitalist is the same.
Why?
Yeah?
Why is not the same? Why is not?
Let me chip in. This is where I chip in.
You see, because hold on. You see, because I forget.
Go on, Melaman, go on.
All right then, Kofi. When you produce something, do you not own it?
If I produce something.
Yes, if I produce something in my workshop, I own it, right? Because I produced it, right?
Yeah, sure.
All right, debunk right there, because I don't own what is produced at my job. Boom,
because
just like
it's
that.
Not your workshop. I don't
no.
your workshop.
The producer is the person who owns the product.
So then
you debunk yourself.
No, you.
Hold on.
You asked me. If it's your workshop.
Hold on. In the context of what Nana Amos Wilson was saying, the question then becomes: is there a power in ownership? Does the fact of ownership grant the owner more power in that dimension than the person who simply assists in the creation of what the other person owns.
The power, and I'm saying, I'm saying, in response to that Marxist analysis, that power is not omnipotent because the capitalists need the worker.
Before you go forward, answer the question, please. Is there a power that ownership grants the owner of the thing that it does not grant those who labor in the production of the thing?
No. Nope.
That's just a lie.
No.
That's just a lie. Then, bro, it's pointless talking.
Brethren, hold on. Yo, so if the capitalists
allow me to manage the panel, please. Thank you very much. AM.
Yo, when you ask me a question,
No.
finish.
Greetings, everybody. Greetings. Finish.
Greetings.
You
know, this not done. You know. But all right, go ahead, Coffee.
Yeah, I'm saying what this really boils down to is what them call asymmetric relationships. In other words, the assumption is that two people coming together for a deal don't have the same kind of don't have the exact same power relations. And I'm saying that you'll never have that in any relationship. However, the dynamic in a market economy, meaning that the best producers are the ones who can bid away the best workers, the skilled workers, the dedicated workers, the ones who are more on time, etc. In other words, the most productive workers. And in that environment, in that competitive market environment, the capitalist does not have omnipotent power. That's the point I'm making. And that assumption is a Marxist assumption.
Okay, if you say so, any assumption that goes against the capitalist order will be considered Marxist because the capitalist has invested significant, psychic energy in making that the dichotomy that must be engaged. At the same time, however, the essence of what Nana Amos Wilson was actually getting at was how power actually behaves. And the differential between the group and the individual levels of power, and the extent to which all real power is engaged on the collective level. And so the example was just an example in relation to the fact that there are groups of people, in this instance the business class in America, who can be seen, as far as their social and political behavior, to act in their group interest.
But there's no such thing as a business class.
No, there's no such thing as a business class.
No, there's no such thing as a business class. The so-called business class is a diverse group of people. If you want to say that there's something called a politically connected business class, then I agree. But the so-called business class don't exist, because they're all different in terms of what they produce, how they can produce it, and most importantly, their connection to political power. However, in an economy where the state have more control over the economy than market forces, then closeness to political power will give you power over the market. So therefore, there is a ruling class, but that ruling class does not gain its power through the market. They gain their power through connections with the state.
I was not finished saying what I was saying, so I'm going to do that now. Okay. So where I was actually going with it was this idea of the individual and the extent to which there are groups of people that act in particular interests within a world, within a society, and the extent to which it is within the interests of those who actually wield that collective power to ensure that there are not other forms of collective power that are able to challenge Fidem power. And so whilst they know very well that they act within a particular and according to a particular interest, okay, they have a vested interest in developing a social environment whereby others, in particular in this instance, African people, never conceptualize ourselves as a collective so as to engage collective power, yeah, or to pursue collective power. And with that, I've got Pastor Kalanji.
Peace, brother. Peace. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Greetings.
Yeah, greetings, man. My question was, and it's something that I wrestled with for a while here in the Americans as a black man, Afrocentric, is why is it that Afrocentricity and Pan-Africanism not being operationalized like it was during the 80s and 90s by some of our great teachers like Dr. Amos Wilson, A.C. Hilliard, and so on? I wanted to put that on you and get your wisdom on why you think it is that it's not operationalized and taken as serious as it was back then.
I'm laughing because I'm wondering whether Nana Amos Wilson and all those that you've mentioned would consider it to have been operationalized during the 90s and the 80s. Yeah, that's an interesting thing to consider. I think, my brother, that we have to contend with the fact that we are dealing with an oppressive situation, as much as there are political interests, yes, that have brought about the revolutionary movements of African people. Okay, and we have been battling a condition of oppression and trying to throw off those shackles of oppression. And when we're trying to do so, the forces that be, in my humble estimation, we have to accept that they are not going to allow us to organize to just throw off their shackles just so. They're going to regroup and they're going to reform and they're going to attack. And generally speaking, because of the traverses of history that I brought out to this point, they are going to be better resourced than we are. We have been fighting a battle, and I'm minded now by the wisdom of another ancestor by the name of Jacob Carruthers.
Yeah, right on.
Better known as Baba Jedi Shemsu Jehuti. And he has a lecture online where he was speaking at an ASCAC conference, yeah, the Association for the Study of Classical African Civilization, for those who are not aware. And he speaks about the fact that there's been these two strains, yeah, among us as a people. And to paraphrase, you've got the nationalist strain and you've got the integrationist strain, the assimilationist strain. Yeah. And these two strains have existed among us. The assimilationist strain is one that, seeks just more closer relationship with the society of the oppressor, the inclusion into the society of the colonizer, the imperialist. Yeah. And then there are those who are nationalists who want to develop something of our own. Yes. A power base of our own where we can affect our own destiny from said power base. I think that as it stands at the moment, a significant amount of our energy over the last 50 to 100 years has been spent on that assimilationist project. And the easier that they make it for us to assimilate, in other words, the more comfortable, being within society becomes for us, especially for those of us who are within the metropole. So we're living in Britain, we're living in America, we're living in France, we're living in Canada. Yes, the easier that is for us, the more sexy that assimilation strain looks. And so it's more difficult to convince our people, of the need for us to have our own, build from our own. It's more difficult to find ones of us who are inspired by a vision of a society that is looks very much different to the one in which we live. It becomes, most of us are simply trying to make ourselves black versions of great white men. You know what I'm saying? and their institutions. Yeah. So even when you go back home, my family's from the Caribbean, and the idea of trying to replicate quote unquote Westminster democracy is the dominant sensibility within government. The idea of trying to replicate the free market capitalism is the dominant idea within the economic sphere and within government. And so yeah, we're not thinking with our own minds, and it becomes more and more difficult to do so, because whenever we begin to make significant gains in that regard, we are generally speaking also going to have to face violence, yeah, on the part of the oppressor, and not everybody's willing to put themselves in that kind of harm's way. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, that did, man. Thank you for the wisdom, brother. In fact, I was just listening to Dr. Amos Wilson's lecture on assimilation versus nationalism. So that was spot on, brother. Keep doing what you're doing.
Yes, sir. Much appreciated, Pastor Kalanji, and feel free to come through anytime. You can stay on the panel, yeah, because it's an open house, so feel free to stay where you are and contribute to any conversation that you want to. AM, feel free to let me know when you want to come in. All on coffee, please. Imhotep.
Peace, peace. Can I be clearly heard?
You can.
Peace and Pan-African power to everybody under the sound of my voice, as per usual. I actually, well, obviously, I taken us on a tangent. You know, that's just always had things going on in my head. I was wondering if you ever came across what the name of the linguistic thing is, where let's say Jamaicans and some West Africans put a H in front of some E's, like they would say "heg." You know, I'm sure it's a thing. You know, because I see it in Jamaica and I see it in West Africa. So I'm sure it, you know, there's a, but you know, do you know anything about it?
If there is a word, we would have to come up with that, because I don't think the linguists themselves in the
The
West
Haitians and the French also do it. So it's not a English speaking thing.
No. I think the French do it when they're speaking English. They don't do it in their own tongue.
Okay. Yep.
Interesting. Yeah, so I don't know if the link, put it this way, it is something that is, as you said, identified, particularly among Africans from Jamaica. I don't know if a linguist has ever identified a specific terminology for identifying that sensibility. Me don't know. There are others. There's a very good recent lecture, by the way, on a channel called the African Caribbean Institute of Jamaica, where our brethren, I forget his name, we'll say it in a minute. Farrockson, Dr. Sutton Farrockson. I'll get his name in a second. But he delivered a presentation on African words in Jamaican language. That's a side note, but it's just to say go check out that lecture there. I don't know of a specific terminology to identify that sensibility, but yeah, we know it exists. So yeah.
I watch
I've just seen your message in the back chat as well, so I'll definitely do that. Give thanks. Yeah.
I bet. I listened to Sun show and oh gosh, somebody else, I can't remember his name now. But you would be surprised at the kind of things that exist within, let me just say, African American vernacular English. That there are linguistic terms for already established now, boy.
Oh, so, yeah.
And then I suppose the second question, slight pressure. I want to know if you was able to contact Aderonke, because I'm really excited to see her come on the program.
Not yet. And the reason, well, true I go on next month. I've delayed it. Yeah, so that now go on until next year. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, we'll see how it goes. Yeah, definitely next year. Yeah, we're going to get up on the thing. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that one myself. For those who are not aware, Aderonke is a sister from Nigeria she's a Yoruba sister. And she does Yoruba language lessons, but she really breaks down the language and its etymology as well in many beautiful ways. Yeah. So yeah, what am I gonna do now? I'm gonna play a little more of this Amos Wilson. Yeah, cause you know what I'm saying. You know the ancestor have more for say. So let's take in some of this and we'll talk afterwards. All right, blessings.
Market, even though they're not working, they're not earning money, but they are a market. Because they know that these little kids can worry mom and daddy to death. And mommy and daddy are going to do what? Buy those gifts. And therefore, the little ads are directly shot directly at them. They internalize them and express them in their attitudes and behavior toward their parents. And their parents are influenced by it, and the money goes out.
By the way, so there's two quick things there. The first, yeah, and I'm gonna play the more after this, but the first thing is that I learned recently that there are certain countries in Europe where it's illegal to market and advertise to children. Yeah, many of I didn't know this until about a month ago. Yeah, it's actually illegal. Yeah, you are not allowed by law to market and advertise to children. So you're not seeing a Thai advert on the television. You're not seeing a billboard, yeah, direct at no picnic, yeah, and all of these things, yeah, which is a very interesting thing because the extent to which, yeah, right, I have a son, okay, and you can see how their consciousness and their desires, yes, are shaped by the things that they watch and the adverts that they respond to. Yeah, you know what I'm saying, and all of these things. It's why you have to be very careful what you allow your children to watch and take in. Yeah, because when we say now that when children are being advertised to, as Nana Amos Wilson is alluding to, it means that children are a market. They're seeing children as a consumer base. Okay, but then how are the sensibilities of a child developed in terms of what a child wants to consume? Does the child come pre-programmed with wants, or are those wants induced as a result of what is valued in the social environment that child is being raised in? Yeah? These are questions that we have to answer. And so when we're talking about markets and marketing, yes, we have to engage the extent to which our principles and our values and our sensibilities and our desires are being induced as a process of this marketing.
But the extent to which children are being
and it's
marketed.
hard once you get into it to stop it. This is what we're talking about. It becomes what? Imperative. You can't cut it off. It's like trying to cut off a smoking habit or something. Thus, the attention and energies of people in capitalist society becomes decidedly privatized. Consequently, while the socialization of the owning class members is designed to foster class loyalties and cohesions, the socialization of the propertyless move with opposite effect. We can see it going in opposite direction. Thus, the development of the working class consciousness is retarded because all of them are caught up in their individual consumption and concern. And yet we're talking about businessmen, businesswomen, the corporate, group, the business establishment, but we hesitate to talk about groups of others on the lower level. Once again, we see that power is used not only to pursue interest, but to define interest, which is another power that the wealthy and the rich and the owners of production have that the consumer does not have, to define interest. Again, in Black on Black Violence, I talk about there in chapter 8, desiring production, of how tastes are created by the system, and how, in a sense, those things that we own as Black people are devalued by the system. And only those things that have value are things owned by the other people. And their advertising establishment and their media creates a taste for everything that you don't have and that you can't make for yourself. That's the only way it can work. How did you gain the taste for what you have today? And I talk about that there. I talked about the crack industry, right? That it is the taste and addiction of the crack addicts that maintains the whole infrastructure of the crack industry. That it is the manipulation of their desire that is the engine that runs the whole thing. That is why the pusher, as pusher, may give away drugs free at the beginning. To do what? Create what? Desire. To produce what? Desire. And desire once produced. And now since he has the desired products, he now lives off the desire that he's created. And we are all addicts as oppressed people, watching our oppressors create our desires. And what's being created in us, it's our desires that maintain the system. And that group then has a media organization. It has media organizations, not individuals, what? Organizations. Corporation is what? A body. Company is a what? Body. These are what? Groups. But then they'll tell us to act as what? Individuals. They go to
Sorry,
work
I had to.
and coordinate their activities. They dress within certain limitations. They talk certain sort of ways. They write certain sort of ways. They express certain types of outlook. They go to school for years so that they can be appropriately shaped to talk, walk, dress, write, perceive the world, so that they can fit into what? An organization and a body, so they can fleece the other individuals in the world. This is what it's about. But then they're going to make you think, to think in terms of blackness, to operate in terms of blackness is unusual.
Can you pause it
It's
sometime
odd,
soon, yeah?
it's wrong. But of course, what I say, things have to be backwards, don't they? This is the nature of things. Again, speaking about class the other night, you know, to get engaged in black studies is something bad. But what have you been studying? White studies.
Go ahead, Amy.
Yeah, but I was going by the point before you did cut me off still, you know, but go on through.
No. Kofi, I'll set you
No,
up
it's
still.
not you, it's
Like
ShakaRa cut me off.
okay, all right. Yeah, well, I got some other things to say, but on the fact that you're speaking, advertising is a function of capitalism. Interestingly enough, yeah, there's no utility in advertising if there's no competition for the production and sale of goods. Would you agree, Kofi?
Yeah, man, that's it.
Okay. Do you agree?
I actually disagree with that a little bit.
Okay.
Let me hear your disagreement.
Because it's kind of the same thing when econ becomes capitalism. Because why is it necessary that there's capitalism for me to market my product? I think markets exist before
That wasn't the
capitalism.
claim.
Hold on. Markets exist before capitalism. So I'd imagine the people in the markets had to market their products in some way, right?
Yes, but only through capitalism that you have free markets. Because you have slave markets, yeah? So slave don't really have a choice between when
No, I'm not talking about. I'm not talking about. I'm just saying. I just slightly disagree in the sense that the terms are being restricted within capitalism, when I don't think it should be restricted within that. They are beyond that, in my opinion.
I think
so
I guess
would
I think I get what you're
advertising
saying.
be
Sorry,
you?
I think I get what you're saying, Meloman. But I think there may be a slight difference here in the sense of the fact that, like, for example, within today's environment, advertising and marketing is a budget. Yeah, it's like, you know, like if you make a film, the budget to market and advertise the film can sometimes be more than the cost of the film itself. Right? You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And so when you're looking at the what you need to recoup off of the film, you have to recoup both of those things. Yeah. I don't like, for me to go to, like, I don't know if that's the same thing as the market woman saying, buy your sweet oranges. Yeah.
Yep,
Wait,
it's the
hold
same
on. Yeah,
thing.
let me chip in.
It's the same thing. The same
Oranges.
thing. Just that the
Let me-
market woman don't have the capital to back up that.
Let me
But
respond to
same thing.
both.
Hold on. But that is the point, right? If we're living in a capitalist society, then access to capital is a differential that fundamentally changes reality. Hold on, that fundamentally changes reality and changes the nature of what you are engaged in, right? So yeah, we can agree it's all advertising, but we can say that there's a qualitative difference between one level of things and the other level of things, right?
And I'm saying the reason why certain people, the reason why capital.
Sorry. Also, within the context of a woman selling oranges at the market, her capacity, her desire in selling oranges may not necessarily be to have her oranges sold without sister down the road oranges being sold, for example. When you're in when you're in a you won't understand what I'm about to say, so don't worry. It's always that you're confused, all right? Because you haven't studied anything economical outside of capitalism. At the same time, when you're in a communal setting, being able to sell oranges or exchange oranges, or for whatever it is, for whatever it is that you're exchanging it for, does not necessarily mean that you are trying to outsell or sell at the expense of other women in the market. That's not necessarily the context of what is taking place in every market system. So we have to be
That's straw monster.
Hold on.
It's correct.
Hold on.
It's not.
That's straw man.
Hold on.
The aim is the same, is to sell your product.
Sorry, to be clear, it can only be a straw man if I was responding to or attempting to describe somebody else's argument. I was not.
Hold on.
Sorry.
Hold on.
That was on. One second. That was on the floor at the time. Okay.
Okay.
If you don't want to engage in that kind of conversation, then fine. But
it's the same. It's the same capitalist thing. People are free. People are free to sell however they want to sell.
No problem. No. That's the point. Yeah, but go ahead, Melaman. Go ahead.
Yeah, because I still disagree, because greater complexity of a concept does not change that it's the same concept. Because my car is more advanced does not change that it's still a car. So because the woman in the market is doing a simple version of advertising does not change that it is advertising. The concept in general is still the concept. Yes. That's just flat out. Now, further to you, Kofi, even in a slave market, I have to rub the slave down with oil, and that costs money. I have to buy that oil, just the same as an investment in marketing in a capitalistic market. So even the lady at the market who worked on a town, she have to decorate her stall, and that costs money too. So regardless of anything, the concept exists. The concept exists outside of capitalism. Would
you agree that a slave market, a society that have a slave market, is a restricted market?
I don't care what you're saying.
No, man, answer that question there. If you have slaves, by definition, that's a restricted market.
No.
Oh, really? Really?
No. The
taking away people's freedom is not restricting freedom.
There's 2 things here.
How are they?
Sorry. It's not necessarily a restrictive market. You've taken away their freedom, but again, this is the illusion that this is the game that is played.
But if the slaves were free, that would be a market for products.
No, that's again capitalist revisionism. The
slaves, the free slaves, were a market for products.
Excuse me, no. Within an enslavement system, the enslaved population are product on the market.
But is the restricted market?
The existence of the enslaved, because of how the enslaved are defined, first of all, there is a free market.
You're trying to make it more complicated than it is, Virgil.
No, I'm not. I'm actually not.
A slave is a restricted person. So a slave market is by definition a restricted market. They're not free. Oh, that's hard to understand. We're not getting it. I say anti-capitalist, Virgil. You're going to deny something as obvious as slavery, meaning restricted freedom.
We're not debating capitalism at the moment.
That was what Melaman was saying. Say markets existed before capitalism. Yes,
that's a fact.
Markets before, yes, a fact. But markets existed before capitalism were slave markets, heavily restricted markets.
But
That's the whole point of Adam Smith's book, that capitalism is supposed to usher in a new kind of relationship, voluntary relationship.
And I was actually speaking and you interrupted me.
Okay.
So, yeah, the issue here is that we are negating what African people were within the context of these, or how Africans were classified within the context of these markets. If the African is a product like any other product on the market, the restriction of the African's freedom is not a contradiction to the existence and the freedom or lack thereof of the market, because the Africans are considered a product of the market. The Africans are collateral. The Africans are products that can be insured, bought, sold. The Africans are can be used as collateral on a loan, for example. The enslaved Africans, when they revolt and liberate themselves, are considered to have negatively affected the property, impacted the property and the property rights of the enslaver, because the enslaved is the enslaver's property. This is why after Britain abolished the so-called slave trade in 1807, the enslaving population of Britain were paid reparations because they had lost their property.
Boy, you're good for the non-sequitur, I tell you, boy.
That's how that relationship works. Okay, so restricting the freedom of African people or people who are enslaved is a restriction of freedom and liberation, but that restriction of freedom and liberation for those people has nothing to do with the nature of the market itself, especially because
if the market define the market, especially because define market, the market,
especially because
define the market.
I want to complete my statement.
Okay, all right. Complete it and then please define it. Thanks.
Especially because when you look at abolition, and the arguments that took place around abolition, as exemplified by what took place after abolition, a lot of the arguments that were for and against abolition related to the relative loss of property that the enslavers would suffer as a result of the abolitionary process. So there was no freedom or lack thereof as far as the market is concerned in relation to slavery.
Please define the market. Please define the market.
A market is an institution or a group of institutions that is able to facilitate the exchange of goods and services among people and institutions.
No, those are the market is individuals demanding and supplying goods and services, choosing to buy goods and not choosing to buy goods. Hold on.
Corporations do participate.
Let me just hold on. A market individuals demand and supply, the sum total of demand and supply by individuals. Therefore, if half the population, half the individuals, or 3/4 of the individuals in a society are enslaved, therefore they are not free. By definition, that's a limited market. So anti-capitalists go around with all kind of complicated justifications to deny the obvious.
You're missing the point. you're missing the point. You're assuming that the enslaved are considered to be individuals. This is the point. African people within the context of this enslavement system were not considered to be human beings.
By who? By who?
And
by
for
who?
example,
who never consider them? Who? The abolitionists them?
The collective consciousness.
Did Adam Smith see Africans as humans, as individuals?
The collective consciousness of the people who dominated said society, yes, dehumanize the African by virtue of being African, and even continue to doing so even after.
Remember that. Remember.
So explain abolitionism. Explain liberalism.
I will explain it by virtue of the fact that the dehumanization continued, because it is not as though
that's irrelevant. Are free people a market?
It is not as though
are free Africans a market?
It's not as though
you can answer that. All right.
It is not as though these people who were freed were then regarded as human beings.
That's irrelevant. Were they a market as free Africans?
Excuse me, thank you. It is not as though these people who were freed relative to the market that they were enslaved within were then granted the benefits of having been.
That's irrelevant. Were they seen as a market?
How can that be? See that now we get into the. Remember we said
because it don't matter. It don't matter if Walmart views me as subhuman. It matters if Walmart advertises to me because Walmart.
Discipline yourself. Thank you very much. All right. So, if in the instance of the fact, let's look at it like this: the market that gave reparations to the enslaver.
Market don't give reparations. The government of Britain gave reparations.
The government is a market player.
No, it is not. You see, you don't know these things, brethren.
Yes, it is.
How can it not be a market player if it's purchased?
It doesn't even make sense.
Calm down, Trini. Calm down, Trini. Calm down. You don't know much. Calm down. Don't bother talking this because nobody.
Kofi, respectfully, you're the one that's raising your voice in a Bridget. So
exactly.
just calm down yourself. Yeah?
Right. However, it was a market player enough for it to organize to give private individuals who own money for loss of property. So that money, whether the government, you say the government's not a market player, that money that the government gave to those enslavers made its way into the market.
Okay? Anybody else apart from the Trinity, the Don Trinity, who believe that government and market is the same thing?
Excuse me. Thank you very much. All right. The enslavers who were, the society in which, and this happened in the UK, it happened in France, it happened in the United States of America as well. These enslavers and their governments and the society in which they were part, the market that they operated within, didn't see the Africans who were freed via abolition as human beings enough.
You're kind of breaking up. Anybody else noticing breaking up?
No, he's fine.
No, you need to seek a better connection on the market. That's what needs to happen. All right? You need to go back to the market to find that connection.
Yo, Bridget, if you think that government is the market, then trust me.
You didn't say that, Kofi. You never said that.
Oh, come on, man. Come on. That's what he said.
Don't respond. Kofi well knows I didn't say that. Yeah, we're not gonna chase down that rabbit right there. So.
Bridget.
I am going to complete my statement. That's what's gonna happen. Okay. Yeah. The market in which these enslavers were granted reparations for loss of property, literally, this is what they were given reparations for, didn't see those Africans as human beings enough for them to be granted with the same. Okay. And even when a system like in America, certain things were promised to those Africans, they were not granted. And some of them that received it, it had it taken away from them.
Is my audio or everybody hearing him break up?
The ending of the enslavement process did not grant free and unfettered access to the market for African people. Anywhere
Irrelevant.
that
That's
never happened.
irrelevant to the question I asked
Never
you.
happened. That
That's
never happened.
irrelevant to the question I asked you.
We're having a conversation. So if you don't like the point that's being made, that is again your problem.
But I thought you were responding to my point. To my point.
I'm responding to the conversation. There are many points that were being made.
Okay.
And I'm responding to them. All right. So yeah. I'm minded to play a little more Amos Wilson. But go ahead, Amos. It's like look like you want to say something.
Me?
Yeah.
Yo, say you don't want me respond to what you said. All right.
Coffee,
all right,
enough.
No, man, go on through.
Enough. Yeah, the thing now, if you're gonna play Amos Wilson, then I'm ready to take it somewhere else still, bro. So if you want to just finish up that, and then if you've got time,
I don't necessarily have to play.
Yeah? All right.
Yeah, go on.
No, so I'm into like. I don't mean to bring Kofi back into the sphere of influence that he's already commanded, but I'm interested to know, Kofi as a capitalist, how he regards. I mean, in fact, I'll read out what I wrote on the side. I've said I actually want to go somewhere else entirely, but I'm interested to know how a man like Kofi regards the constituent components of the capitalist system, and I'm talking about those things are not necessarily related directly to economics. So the other functions of the system. So say, for example, I mentioned advertising. I was really trying to go somewhere else with it towards propaganda itself, right? But I want to know how a man like Kofi regards those components of the capitalist system and whether he believes the genesis of some of those things that he may see as bad have come directly from and contribute to the problems we face. And then also to what degree they are irreconcilable with our liberation. I assume that he is someone that wants us to be liberated from any kind of oppressive scenarios that we're facing currently. Because I often hear you, Kofi, talk about economics, but you don't talk about anything else, right? And I'm really interested to know what else, whether when you look at the world, you look at the violence on the continent, you look at the oppression that's happening to all of our people everywhere, whether any of that oppression can come directly from your understanding of capitalism, and whether really that, because I don't really hear you rallying against anything apart from this idea of Marxist incursions on your precious capitalist system. I don't hear nothing.
All right. I mean, that's a broad question, but on the topic, on the thing where you bring up about advertising and propaganda, I mean, Amos Wilson talk about it like it's some drug deal, some crack cocaine that they get you hooked on. But again, that's another fallacy. The extent to which advertisers can influence you is the extent to which your immediate environment acts as a shield, so to speak, from whatever bad or an effective filter for negative influences as opposed to positive influences. So, for example, somebody like ShakaRa, who grew up in a strong family structure, is going to react very differently to advertising than to a ghetto youth who grew up without any father and mother on welfare or mother not at home, etc. So, therefore, the family unit is very important. The capitalist does not have omnipotent powers. The only way the capitalist can force a transaction on you is if they do it through the government. Just like when Amos Wilson said in the book Grouping for Black Power, when the government take taxpayers' money and give it to rich industrialists, right? So that's the only way the capitalist can get money from you without your consent, right? And that's not capitalism, that's actually mercantilism. But in the broader question where you asked about Africa and capitalism and bad actors. Of course, you have bad actors in every profession. You have entrepreneurs, bad actors. You have accountants, bad actors. Teachers, bad actors. Politicians, for the most part, 99% of them are bad actors. So yeah, again, the extent to which bad actors can really damage and destroy a society, like for instance Haiti and Jamaica, is the extent to which government give those bad actors control over everybody else, or government give those bad actors privileges over everybody else. And the kind of economic system that give bad actors privileges in the market is exactly the kind of economic system that people like Donald Trump and Amos Wilson promoting. Unfortunately for Amos Wilson, he was promoting economic fallacies.
We're gonna ignore the claim about Amos Wilson until Coffee plucks up the courage to evidence it.
Okay,
Yeah, so
on the last stream you met
I don't want to hear about my last stream. If I read it, go and find the quotation.
The economic deceptions, the PowerPoint 8 page, PowerPoint number 8, the last sentence. PowerPoint number 8, the last sentence on economic deceptions.
What was said?
Taking taxpayers' money and giving it to rich. Boy, you produced that book Blueprint and you don't know what he said. I thought you were one of those who helped publish that book.
I am categorically saying that what you are saying Amos Wilson said was not said. So unless you are prepared to evidence it with what Amos Wilson said, either at this point, you're going to read the statement that Amos Wilson said, and we're going to move on. Are you going to read the statement?
I don't have the book. I don't have the book. You know where it is, but you don't want to go feed because you're afraid of the truth.
You've gone and found a stream that I presented, whereby the words are literally on the screen. Okay, so if that is the case, you can find it and read exactly what
I just tell you the 8 PowerPoint present. You had 8 PowerPoint presentations. The last page. Anybody can look for themselves. I'm not trying to convince you because you know the truth, but you don't want it to come out.
Because in the last stream that I did, there was not a PowerPoint with Amos Wilson on it. I read a PDF, yes, with an excerpt from the book Blueprint for Black Power.
Yes.
Amos Wilson was not on any of the slides that I presented. He was not on any of the slides that I presented from.
It wasn't his book.
Lord of mercy.
It was his book.
We're going to move on. So either you're going to read the statement exactly.
Move on, man. Move on. Yeah, move on.
Thank you very much. Go ahead, Imhotep.
Peace. I actually have, it's not a question directly from a sister of mine, but we were having a sort of debate about it because she was doing an assignment, right? So so for the sake of the audience who didn't see the message I sent, my sister is a politics and sociology major at UE. Some of you may know what UE is. And so she was doing an assignment basically detailing some of the, actually there's a YouTube video, I can't remember exactly the name of it, but basically detailing slave uprisings and the formation of their societies post their uprising, right? And subsequent to the research that she did, she seemed quite jaded about, let's say, the behavior of Africans who had either freed themselves or become free post-emancipation, and the lack of Pan-African interaction, as she could see, between those varied groups. So I suppose I want to ask on her behalf, if you think that after being freed, however, freeing themselves or being freed after emancipation, that the African either polities or populations were minded towards Pan-African liberation and emancipation, or whether they were minded towards the individual establishment of their own polities and or the adoption of Western values.
Depends on the place.
Well, more than it depends on the place, it depends on the actors within the space as well. I think everywhere that we were, you're gonna find both sensibilities, right? You know, the revolutionary, the anti-colonial sensibility and the assimilationist sensibility. Yeah, we have to be mindful of the fact that our ancestors were enslaved for hundreds of years. Okay, There are two things here. It depends on what she's looking for. So when you say Pan-African, lack of Pan-Africanism, maybe you can give me an insight, Imhotep, yeah? She look for organization with names like the Pan-African Association of Anti-Colonial Liberation, with a manifesto and you know, and all these things, or is she just looking at what what people were engaged in during that time? Because I would argue that kind of organization with the title and the name Pan-Africanism doesn't pick up steam. It's not like it's non-existent, but doesn't pick up steam until the mid to late 1800s. I think prior to that, you're dealing with domestic organizations that are identifying themselves as African, related to other Africans, like churches, for example, or mutual aid organizations. You're also looking at rebellions, yeah. So yeah,
much of it is civil rights as well. Much of it is civil rights focused.
To a degree, I'm gonna come back to that point. That's an interesting one. I'm gonna see why you said it. But let me ask Imhotep, do you know what she's looking for when she said that there's a lack of Pan-Africanism?
So I think it would be, I mean, the first one might have been a little facetious, but I think if she had seen the first one, then she would definitely have been satisfied. But I think more it's the second. And it's not necessarily so much that she found evidence of a lack of Pan-African unity, but instead she found evidence of, and I'll give just one particular example of, let's say the so-called Black Caribs in St. Vincent, who while staving off imperial domination of St. Vincent at the time, were simultaneously raiding European settlements, enslaving Africans who were enslaved there, and bringing them back to St. Vincent to adopt the plantation economy. So her perspective is that, well, you know, it seems like a lot of them will not just not Pan-African, but actively participating in European colonialism.
I understand.
Or in the system of European colonialism.
I understand. You will definitely find that sensibility, and that sensibility is a consequence of the fact that slavery gave birth to didn't end the colonial era. Yeah, so we were still operating within a colonial system, and ones found means and ways of negotiating that reality. Okay, and some of those things were to the benefit of our liberation. Some of those things weren't. In fact, sorry, before I go any further, let me ask Bunya, why was he saying that some of it is not, some of it is civil rights?
Are we just to clarify, are we talking about the Caribbean only?
I guess so, yeah. It's the Caribbean that the sister's research is in, right?
Yes, it seems to be her research is in the Caribbean, but I don't know that the question she's asking is limited in scope to the Caribbean.
Right. Sorry, okay. I didn't hear the question properly.
Is the sister from Trinidad?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'm interested in this research now, you know.
Yeah. No, listen, when she tells me about some of the assignments that she's doing, it's like stuff like, Gil, you have to send me this stuff. You have to. I need to read some of this research, you know.
I'd love to interview her. When I lie, I love to interview her.
Listen, I keep telling my students and them to come on the bloody stream. They're afraid. I don't know if they're afraid that, you know, it's a hostile environment.
You know, but I've realized. Well, I say that because me know some woman where would I love for jumping. So that love for, you know, debate and all them things. But I realize sometimes the energy can be, you know. So, but this different from that still. I would just love to interview the sister on her research. So maybe we should arrange that, yeah. But sorry, did you answer the question, Bunya, or in relation to
well, because I was thinking more of the States, but I would assume that when you come out of the enslavement process, not even come out of the enslavement process, but after the emancipation and independence and them type of thing, there, it's civil rights you're looking for first, isn't it? Naturally.
Oh, I get what you mean, but see, I get what you mean, I would argue,
Sure.
however, that in that context, there's not necessarily a sharp distinction between civil rights and Pan-African
And I
organizing.
agree. I can agree that.
Right.
I can agree that.
Yeah. So to give an example of this, Paul Bogle, in the 1860s, what they were fighting against was the land situation, the plantocracy, as them call it. Yeah. So again, this is after enslavement now, and Africans were still being restricted from the primary means of production on the island, which is land. Okay. And so the people that are agitating politically on the issue of land rights. Yeah. But within the context of that, Paul Bogle says, color for color. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Right. And so as in we are supposed to organize ourselves around the fact that we are black people. Yeah. And all of these things. And there are various different things that happen within that context. All right. So Paul Bogle is a Pan-African hero, if you understand the thing. In that context. Joe Talmana, has the sister never researched Joe Talmana?
I wouldn't be able to speak for her, but I've never heard her mention, so maybe not.
Okay, so Joe Talmana is but you should know the name Joe Talmana.
Yeah, so you're saying Talmana, but the name I know is Joe Tamana.
Okay, maybe I am mispronouncing the thing. Yeah.
Well, no, I mean it could just be the name change as it travels, you know.
Yeah, true. But yeah, so hold on. It is Talmana. It is Talmana. It is Talmana.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We probably have it like corrupted here from constant use or whatever.
Okay. All right. What may I say? No. What may I say? Yeah. So I would argue that to be a manifestation of Pan-Africanism. There's the tune. Hold on there. What? Kushti, me call your name today, you know. I wonder why I'm going for Kushti. So it's good to see you, Kushti. You know what I'm saying? We got Kushti in the building. This tune that I've been opening up my my show with. Hold on.
Big tune.
All right, so the Bakabusi Nenge, as I've explained before, is a group of Maroons in Suriname, who are fighting against colonialism. So I would argue that is a manifestation of like without all of these things, what comes to be known as Pan-Africanism doesn't exist. It doesn't happen. Then now there are people that we need to look at, for example, and I would say I don't know the extent to which the sister has studied Haiti, but that would be a good look. Yeah. The study of Haiti after the revolution, because in the midst of a new colonial incursion that gave manifestation to some neocolonial vibrations as far as the government is concerned, there are many brothers and sisters, and I'll name two. Yeah, I'll name two. One is Antenor Firmin. Yeah, Antenor Firmin, who was one of the key writers like in the what am I trying to say? In the mid part of the 1800s to the late 1800s, and also Sylvienne. Why is his first name got out of my head? Sylvain. It will come to me in a second. But yeah, Antenor Firmin and
is it Frank?
No, not Frank.
Benito Silva.
Benito. Yes, Benito.
Yeah.
Benito. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? I would look at those two figures in particular. And there's a book written by some European American called Beyond the Slave Narrative. I forget her name, but I've got the book on my shelf somewhere. But she engages in some analysis of Haiti after the revolution and the things that the government were trying to do during that period of time. Yeah, which is a story in and of itself that we need to go into in terms of that the geopolitics and the economics of it. It's a good story, you know, to go into. But I hope that assists Imhotep.
Most definitely. But also, so the question I asked earlier was based on the debate that we had some questions that she was asking me that I didn't feel capable of answering in full detail. But she actually did just send me a question. Let me just scroll back up and to ask you if what do you imagine Africa would have been like presently if the transatlantic slave trade never occurred, and if the if colonization of the continent itself hadn't occurred in the way that it did. And I think maybe the context of that question requires the knowledge of what medieval Africa was like, what kind of civilizations were flourishing at that point in time.
100%, and then you can extrapolate and kind of envision how we would have developed from that point. I would say that one of the key texts in that regard is Pre-Colonial Black Africa by Sheikh Anta Diop. It's probably the best book I know on that subject. Yeah, because he's not just looking at the history lesson. We did this and we did that. In fact, I might be able to give you a piece of it all on there to explain why I'm saying that book there. So stay tuned. But let me just explain though. What I was saying a minute ago. Antonio Firmin and Benito Sylvain were noted activists from Haiti who were known to Firmin known for more his writing politically about the Haiti situation, and Sylvain was actually a writer but also a traveler and an organizer, and so many of those who were organizing throughout the 1800s would have known Benito Sylvain. And what's it? What am I saying? Yeah, and he was involved in proto Pan-Africanist organizing, and was even involved in the 1900 Pan-African conference that was called by Henry Sylvester Williams. Yeah. So he was involved in all of that. But so he's a significant stalwart, and in fact, he had an organization that when you translate it into English sounds very similar to Universal Negro Improvement Association. Yeah, came and developed. So yeah, serious man. But both of those are considered to be significant founding fathers of Pan-Africanism that don't get as much notoriety because they weren't writing in the English speaking world, if that makes sense. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, I was going somewhere with this. Oh yeah, I'm gonna try and bring up a piece of pre-colonial Black Africa to explain some things. Let me see if I've got that. Yeah, sir. But yeah, Imhotep, you have to talk to the sister and check if she would be open to an interview.
I told her, but she said she afraid again bash in the comments. So I tell her, obviously you ain't go bash her, but it's not that kind of shit.
I know I gotta do that and tell her, I say anybody will do that dead. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? One dead for less and all of these things. But for real though, the show is not always a debate show. Yeah, so as you said last week, we interview Dr. Kamal Rashid. And that's just an interview. So maybe if you show her those kind of shows, then you know she'll realize that yeah, it's not a combative. Me not in the gladiator thing. This is not a gladiator arena, as much as you know. Certain at a certain time. We're not in them thing. Yeah, we're not in them thing there. All right. So let me show you this now. Hold on there. Oh, forget some still I present. Amos Wilson. We'll close the show with some Amos Wilson. True in my carry the thing. The spirit of the thing right here now. So this is just an excerpt from Pre-Colonial Black Africa by Shona Language, and just to demonstrate some of the kind of things that he's dealing with. Yeah, until now, 1960, date of the first edition, the history of Black Africa has always been written with dates as dry as laundry lists, and no one has almost ever tried to find the key that unlocks the door to the intelligence, the intelligence, the understanding of African society, failing which no researcher has ever succeeded in revivifying the African past, in bringing it back to life in our minds before our very eyes, so to speak, whilst remaining strictly within the realm of science. Yet, the documents at our disposal allow us to do that practically without any break in continuity for a period of 2,000 years, at least so far as West Africa is concerned. Therefore, and by the way, I'm gonna a bit of throw word, yeah, here. I'm gonna throw some word right now. Yeah, throw word. There's a lot of debate that takes place here, in the quote unquote online conscious community, where people we're West Africans, you know, because they don't like any talk of Kemet, yeah. But me not hear the champions of the West African exclusivity ever cite this book. Them never do it. When the man say, yeah, yet the documents at our disposal allow us to do that, practically without any break in continuity for a period of 2,000 years, at least insofar as West Africa is concerned. Okay, so look a bit at throw word, then we're gonna move on. All right. Therefore, it had become indispensable to unfreeze, in a manner of speaking, to defossilize that African history which was there at hand, lifeless, imprisoned in the documents. However, this work is not, properly speaking, a book of history, but it is an auxiliary tool indispensable to the historian. It indeed affords him a scientific understanding of all the historical facts hitherto unexplained, in the sense that it is a study of African historical sociology. It permits us no longer to be surprised at the stagnation, or rather the relative stable equilibrium of pre-colonial African societies. The analysis of their social political structures presented in it, allowing us to gauge the stabilizing factors in African history. Okay, so I say that because he's if I had it up right here, I would read the some of the chapter titles, but he's going through an analysis of constitution, social order, politics, yeah, economics, you know what I'm saying? And these are the things that we would need to analyze if we were looking at, you know, what might we be today had it not been for enslavement and colonialism. Obviously, it's impossible to answer that question definitively, but we can get some good ideas, you know what I mean? So I hope that answers that question.
Certainly to my satisfaction. It also does make me think about when people speak, just the last, let's say, paragraph here. No, last two sentences.
Sorry, I didn't realize I had it on the wrong presentation mode, so people can probably read it better now. But yeah.
Mm-hmm. In the last two sentences here, has me thinking about, like, a lot of time you'll hear racist vitriol about Africans, like, oh, we was backward and we came and find you. Not having developed certain technologies and that kind of thing. And the last two sentences here have me really thinking about, well, the saying necessity is the mother of invention. If your society is stable and there aren't mitigating factors to cause, let's say, internal or external conflict, then it is par for the course that certain technologies will stagnate. Obviously, there'll be innovation, But again,
Yep.
necessity is the mother of invention. So if we don't
Right.
need anything new, it
Right.
kind of might explain some of those things.
Yeah, it's something that we have to analyze in two ways. Yeah. One of them is historical and the other is contemporary. So the point that you made is a very important one, in the sense of the fact that when we're dealing with what you call it now, how we're looking to develop from here on out, whether we're using barometers that are given to us by colonizers and neo-colonizers, if that makes sense. Yeah. So for example, it may be the case that our development may move at a slower pace, or may have moved at a slower pace, if that makes sense, right? And that might be the case now, in terms of if we're developing industries. Let's say, for example, when we're not concerned with quote unquote efficiency, yeah, in a way that would be measured by a capitalist economy, yeah. How they the modus and frameworks for measuring efficiency, yeah, that they have developed, yeah, may not be exactly the same as what we employ, if that makes sense. Because if, for example, yeah, if for example, our major aim is not a profit motive, yeah, our principal aim is not a profit motive, then we're going to take into consideration things other than profit in terms of how we measure success. You see what I'm saying? So profit may be lesser than what it might have been if we made profit the primary, thing, and all these things. And I think the same thing goes for analyzing our ancient societies as well. But yeah, that's just my vibration. I'm opening up the platform. So Meloman, Bunya, you're there, so feel free to jump in at any point.
Oh yeah, definitely. I like to chip in there because I think it's a very dangerous ground to trod on, where it kind of
We
seem like
don't
we're
like them talk there.
excluding.
We don't like them talk there.
Yeah, we're kind of excluding ourselves again from the development that took place outside of Africa, and it's a hard pill to swallow. But how I look at it, especially with regard to the question that your sister asked, is that there's certain things in life that, because of how nature is, certain things are just advantageous, certain characteristics. Like in gaming, you'd call it the meta, the most effective tactical approach or whatever.
Right,
And
right.
whereas, in this world that we live in, right? I read that book as well. I love that book from Diop. Like, I'd say Africa, we were not far in terms of economics, weren't far in terms of maybe architecture. 'Cause I read that, they had toilets, you know what I mean, even up on the second floor of some of the buildings in ancient Ghana, right? So in terms of plumbing, architecture, there's definitely signs that had we not been colonized, you'd reach similar levels of development with a lot of these things. But unfortunately, it comes to military, stuff now, like cannons and stuff. I remember one part of the book, it mentioned that I forget which kingdom or empire it was. They were actually exposed to gunpowder technology and like started messing around making rifles, but for whatever reason they never went full scale production, like how certain European cultures went.
No,
So I think
100%.
Mhm.
Sorry, not to cut you. I don't think the issue is whether we can say we would have had criticisms, yeah. Because Diop does make an analysis and a critical analysis of where we ascended and where we fell short. But when you put it in the context of if Africa wasn't colonized and there was no slavery, then that context would negate the need to invest heavily in weapons, for example, if that makes sense. Yeah. Why would we feel the need to do that? There would be no reason to do that. The only
that's
reason, yeah.
But
Go on.
that's where my disagreement is, because that's how I mentioned the meta, right? So had Africa could remain isolated, right, then we would be allowed to continue ignoring that need, right? But because Africa would not be isolated for, human history, at some point we would confront another group of people with far superior military technology. And
I
that's
get
a
what you're
problem.
saying. I guess I wasn't answering it. I guess I wasn't answering it in the context of the possibility of facing some kind of military force down the road. I think with I'm answering it with the idea that we were not colonized and enslaved, right? That's what I'm saying. And I guess there's more than one way to look at that. At the same time, within this book and even research that has been done since then, we were highly advanced for a significant, even up through the 16 and the 1800s in certain places. Like steel, for example, East Africa was known to have the best steel in the world up until like the 1700s. Yeah. And them kind of things there. So you're right in that respect. But we also have to account for the fact that many of these nations did not have standing armies. Yeah. And the reason why I say we have to be careful is because what necessitated standing armies in Europe was the extent of the warfare that was taking place in Europe. Right? Do you know what I'm saying? Yeah. So I'm saying that if we never had that kind of warfare, that level of warfare consistently, we would have never had the need for a standing army and B to invest so heavily in weaponry, right? And I think that reality is not something that we need to beat ourselves up about. That was just the nature of our society. Now we can say once we encountered these people, yeah, that we should have been more cognizant of the need to engage in the development and production of weaponry. It's a question I've been asked many times. Yeah, like why didn't we reverse engineer the gun? You know what I'm saying? And all of these things, and it does have to do with a cultural sensibility. It also has to do with the fact that the gun technology was actually quite rudimentary for a number of centuries. Yeah, it really picked up pace with the Maxim gun, forerunner to the machine gun, and so on. Before we go on, and we are going to wrap up soon, but I do have a thing with some of the chapter names here. So let me just get that overstanding quickly, and then we can move on. All on there. Right. So yeah. So analysis of the concept of caste. Yeah. Major divisions within the caste system, conditions of the slaves, and then the Badolo, genesis of the caste system, caste in Egypt, genesis of the caste system in India. Yeah. And you got socio-political evolution of the ancient city, social classes, upper trade, yeah, the plebs, priest kings, the city state, individualism, aristocratic revolution, social revolution, etc. You know what I'm saying? So I'm just giving an idea of the subjects that he's dealing with here, that to explain what he was saying earlier. It's not necessarily a history book, but it's engaging in historical sociology. Yes, that's what we're doing with here. Political organization, power of the African empire, strength of the and extent of empires, resources of royalty and nobility, royal treasury, government administration, military organization, judicial organization, yeah, economic organization, barter, modern type commerce, currency, import export, means of transportation, roads, you know, and yeah, it goes on. Oh, and this one's interesting. Retribalization, yeah. So that's an interesting one. Again, ideological superstructure, Islam in Black Africa, and that's one. You know, it goes into various different things here. Peaceful penetration, the role of autochthonous chiefs, metaphysical reasons, and sheriffism, and so on. I should also say renunciation of the pre-Islamic past, yeah, and then sheriffism. Intellectual level, teaching and education. I'm not going to go through the subchapters here. Technical level, so we're going to architecture in Sudan, Zimbabwe, Ghana. You know, glass making, medicine, weaving, agriculture, you know, hunting, etc., etc. And then we deal with migrations, yeah, and the origins of various different groups of people. So that's just a snapshot of what Diop was dealing with there. So that you know, will assist the sistering hopefully as well in terms of her research. All right. When may I say no? So I was open up the conversation, and I know Melaman said what he had to say. My name, Bunya. Did you have a contribution? Taking that as a no.
Oh, sorry. Let me see now. I'm just yamming patty and being easy tonight, you know.
Yo, my youth, you know.
You on this late night eating, you know. You on this late night eating business. Yeah.
And they're homemade as well, you know, Jet.
Oh, is it? That's how y'all go on.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah.
I found one of my essays. I wanted to delve into that a little bit, but I don't know if the panel is open to that.
Go on.
Yeah, man, go on
it's
through.
the subject of my speciality is cinema, as I've said before, innit? So film criticism, yeah. I know that most people don't really have, as Pan-Africanists, we don't really have the capacity to look beyond the story, yeah. So the narrative structure and them type of things and the themes. All right, let me just read out a little bit of something that I wrote, and I wonder what people think of it still. So the work of film criticism must extend beyond the ambit of cinema's stranglehold upon the world, and filmmakers must allow destructive questioning to pull at the seams of the form in order to truly earn its place in the world. Refusal to engage in a film's affective, constructs and expressions is to potentially remove the utility that film was designed for, i.e. to affect the audience in some way. That is an absurd thought for any cinephile, so someone obsessed with cinema, and perhaps a waste of time. But for those of us who are not professional critics, but who criticize as a part of our own engagement with cinema, there is a role to play in the future of the structure, and we must not be stifled into conforming to any of the prison warden's suggestions. Criticism is not a concept belonging solely to particular traditions or cultural forms. It is a standalone concept that finds utility in of itself. The crucial factor is that the criticism is designed to enhance the thing or something else. That something else can be a political agenda or a human experience, in which case the film, if not serving to facilitate that agenda or experience, can potentially be critiqued to the point of removing its utility as a film completely, reducing it to moving images and sound with no form. As a film theorist, I am prepared to critique film in general to the point of destruction rather than to seek to uphold the form through edifying critique. So I'm really pointing towards this idea that I wish film never existed as a Pan-Africanist, right?
Yeah, you touched on this before, yeah, in private reasonings, yeah.
That's
And
right.
it's an interesting thought to me, and I can't say I agree. No,
This is the
and you know what?
eternal battle.
I would love to hear how you apply that analysis specifically to the work of Usman Sambin or
yeah.
What's
Any
his
of
name
them.
there? Yeah, right. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Ethiopia.
Any of our
Haile Gerima. Yeah,
Gerima,
you know what I'm saying? Yeah, right. I love to hear how you apply. And it's interesting that you're making your own self redundant in what you're saying, right? Which is
entirely a justifiable pursuit. And this is the difference with someone like myself, my relationship with cinema, and it extends as well to other modalities in the world that have come about despite us, not because of us. Yeah, and in many respects, actually, because of us, in the sense of have been used to weaponize ourselves against ourselves, right? It's interesting you said that coming off the back of the conversation about weaponry, really, because it's the same argument. We engage in cinema because it's been used as weapons against us, primarily, right? So
well, no, I'm not sure about that actually.
I'm entirely sure about that.
I think we engage it. I think that's one of the reasons why we engage it, and I think it's a good reason. However, I don't. All right. To what extent do you see film as an outgrowth or an evolution of theater?
I could say that I could say to a large extent, but I could also say not at all, because I don't believe. Okay, put it this way, yeah. There's definitely some ancestry there. That's quite clear in it, right? The modality itself, taking, juxtaposing a theatrical piece in front of people in whatever scenario, whether it's passion plays or what have you, yeah, juxtaposing that next to, a group of people sitting in front of a screen, and being manipulated by mise en scène, the arrangement of elements on a screen, the sound design, the everything, right? To me,
But
they're worlds apart, right? And I think that they are totally different modalities that need to be treated as such.
Interesting. 1 second. Let me just hail up brother Rakim Shabazz from Wise and Dome in the building. Bless up yourself, King. You don't know. I saw the thing go. Yeah. We'll soon wrap up soon, so you come too late. But yeah, this is that interesting reasoning. So you're saying that, so like set design and soundtrack and all them thing there as it exists in theater is qualitatively different as far as you're concerned.
Experientially different, I would say.
One area that I think I can agree with you on is in the level of interaction. Yeah, in the sense of the extent to which a theater production or people within a theater production may interact with an audience. Especially in Africa.
Quick question. Have you ever been to, as a performer yourself, have you ever been to or been part of a production that could convince the audience that it's real?
That's a strange question. I guess not.
I want to inject.
Yeah, go ahead, brother. Please do.
I wanted to say I agree with you in many ways, except for that last thing you said. I do agree, and it's very similar to the thing that I was saying about the meta when it comes to warfare, is that I would wish guns don't exist as well. But yet we need to have guns, right? Because other people have guns. So I agree with you. So I would wish film doesn't exist as well, but because they have film and they use it, we have to counter it with film. And also, I wish drugs. No, hold on. Let me tie it up together. I wish drugs didn't exist as well. But you understand, they invented drugs, so we have to, so like even in good and bad ways, cause like our nation will use drugs on the soldiers so they fight better. So there's so many things that we as African people don't necessarily, it's not, culturally our thing that we would want to do naturally do.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that within the present circumstance. Although I do, believe that as much as possible we should find African expressions within everything. Yeah. At the same time, when it comes to things like weaponry, we need to be as effective as possible. I don't have a problem with that. What I'm challenging at the moment though is the idea that the form itself is counter, if that makes sense, right? Just I'm saying. So I can obviously agree with the fact that there are modalities of the form, yeah, that are counter, or there are conventions, yeah, within how the form has developed that we would want to change, negate, analyze, evolve, etc., etc. I don't. But Bunya's making a more essentialist point, which is that cinema and film itself, nothing exists. Yeah, right. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, that reason in there. By the way, have you ever looked into Efua Sutherland? Bunya.
Efua.
Sutherland.
No.
So she's a playwright from Ghana. And she was not just looking to write plays, but evolve African theatrical practice and theory, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So she might be smart if good for Lukina.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
Definitely.
yeah.
I mean, my position is that we haven't yet established the capacity for altering film language beyond that which kind of we're tied to currently. Any one of you lot, if I give you a camera and I give you some money and whatever, you're pretty much gonna align yourself. You may do something experimental. You may, you know what I mean, use a funny lens or whatever. But when you're dealing with the subject, when you're dealing with the subject with the people, them, you're gonna be using the conventions that have been handed to you, right? And
I get what you're saying.
At this stage, and this is why I mean the thing that I read out was really about evolving beyond standard criticism of cinema that usually takes into account not even takes into account, but is usually using the lexicon of cinema to critique cinema, if that makes sense. Right? And I'm saying that we need to move beyond that and challenge the lexicon itself, before we can make such claims as we should be using cinema. I think it's quite absurd for anyone who hasn't done that type of work to boldly state that we should or should not be doing anything with regards to something as dangerous as cinema. You can't tell me any weapon that's been more dangerous than cinema. None.
No, yeah, I'd agree with you. I'd probably broaden it and just say propaganda in general. I don't know if I separate out cinema different from all other forms of propaganda, if that makes sense. And in terms of danger, in terms of the
cinema is propaganda.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. So yeah, I'm not sure if I'd separate cinema out from the rest of the kind of the propaganda that we face. But I take the point.
But Bunya, how would you eliminate cinema? Or is just a wish? In your ideal society,
through an authoritarian government.
No, don't behave yourself, ShakaRa. Stop it. Yeah.
A Bunya Marx and a you ask.
I'm listening. You know what it is, yeah? My expertise in cinema, or my interest in cinema, means that I do watch cinema, I engage with cinema, I have made cinema.
He loves it, mate. He loves it.
Shush, man, shush. And there's a chance that I might engage, I might make more cinema in the future. However, the engagement for me is really centered on unlearning, yeah? So if you give me the ability to build an institution, it will be to lockpick the conventions of cinema to such a degree that the young people that come out of that institution have an option whether to make cinema or not, but actually they're just no longer victims of cinema. And that's the real work, is to because you said something about when we was talking about advertising and how we're not beholden to we're not sorry, what did you say? The propagandists are not omnipotent.
We're not.
Yeah, and that's a crazy statement to me because of the amount of psychological research that has been put into propaganda and the machine itself. It's crazy.
So how come you escape it? And how come ShakaRa escape it?
Here's the point, though.
And how come Meloman escape it?
Here's the point, though. To accept the effectiveness of a thing is not to say that effectiveness is ubiquitous and all powerful. Okay,
good.
So this absolutist talk is nonsense. The enslaved have always been able to break the psychological chains of slavery.
Because they have individual conscience.
It doesn't mean that all of the enslaved were able have done so.
Because they have choice. Because they have choice. They're individuals.
And the difference between the enslaved that did and the enslaved that didn't is not which enslaved had a good family structure and which didn't. And by the way,
nobody said that. Oh, come on, you love come with pure non sequitur, bro.
Coming back to that which was said earlier. as we wrap up the show. Oh, sorry, before I go there, Bunya, would you say the same thing for recorded music? So not
We say the
music.
same thing. Which part?
So it is a CD or a vinyl the same as a film?
Put a little bit more close on that. In what regard?
To the extent that if
I can't understand what you're saying.
If theater is an ancestor, of film, then the band is an ancestor of the radio, for example. And the stereo. All right. So would you come to the same conclusion about the efficacy, not the efficacy, sorry, the ethical utility of stereo as you do film?
The key question, well, first of all, the key activity is to be asking questions. There's so many unanswered questions within that question that's where the real work is. But secondly, the key phrase that should be used is recorded music, not CD.
That's what I said.
No. But the record is, but the key term is recording. Because it altogether, it's like the ability to put various elements together in a non-linear timeline of them coming into fruition, and then arrange them for effect is something not to be like ignored, right? Because that really propaganda is built on the ability to repeat and also to curate to curate time almost. Right? To create a set of elements across time that have no business belonging together, but then to juxtapose them together and create a whole different reality that is then sold to the person as reality.
Okay.
Right?
Boy, so this is a hell of a nerdy conversation still. So we're gonna
whenever you're ready, man. This is my.
We're gonna come back to it. We're gonna have to come back to it.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. Coffee, I guess you had something to say, so go on through and say it.
Seeing, I just want to say, it's very difficult to say with any certainty what African society would look like without the second major contact with Europeans, and I'd be very suspicious about anybody. I'd be very suspicious of anybody who would claim to predict what African society would look like without that second contact. I mean, there are so many variables that would have been at play, you know what I mean? Along with the fact that there's no such thing as an African view of efficiency and profits, just like there's no European view of efficiency and profits. I mean, the mere fact that you have severe ideological differences and opinions in Europe about efficiency, what is efficiency, what is the utility of efficiency, and it's the same thing with profits, shows that these things aren't the preserve of any collective consciousness. So, and it's the same thing with Africans or Asians or whoever, because people.
Mic check.
Yeah, you're good. He just disappeared, man.
The market has spoken.
Share.
No. Yeah, you're terrible,
No. All right. This is the thing, right? So when we talk about, the irony of everything that he just said, that like whilst we're trying to apply concepts like profit, market, and all of these things, whilst asserting the individual, none of these things exist without groups of people. There is nothing. The concept of profit only exists in relationship to groups of people. Yeah, the concept of a market doesn't come about with an individual, right? So yeah, none of these things even make sense on any logical level, especially because when they say the market, them not talk about an ordinary market. You know, when they say the market does and the market says, as though the market is an animate,
Hold on, I'm gonna get cut
sentient
off.
being.
Sorry.
Yeah, you know, I thought the market had spoken, my brother.
Well, yeah. And the fact that markets and profits are the result of people, groups of people cooperating, doesn't detract from the point I was making. How people view markets, how people view efficiency, how people view profits are going to differ. Simple as that.
And you notice though that what was actually said is that our viewpoint may shift based upon what our intentionality is.
Who is our?
Yeah. So,
Who is
so
our?
as a people, any group of people. So
no.
But as African people, and this is why, because I was wondering why this point about Africa without contact with enslaving and colonizing Europeans, why that would be a point that you feel like you need to respond to. But I understand.
Yeah, because people pretending like they have a crystal ball.
I understand. Well, not really, my
and
brother.
When people pretend that they have a crystal ball, be very careful of these people because they're pretending.
It really wasn't that deep a question, and it really wasn't that deep an answer for it to have incensed you that much, except I get it based upon the fact that your entire geopolitical...
you can read my mind. You are the crystal ball people, them.
Yeah, no, it's not about reading mind. It's about
analyzing. Go on, read my mind. Continue.
It's about analyzing statements, right?
No, man, you read my mind. Go on.
That somebody who is married to a political economic ideology that is inherently tied to the development of European.
I'm married to a woman, man. I'm not married to an ideology. Watch your talk.
Yeah, and Western Europe would be particularly concerned about us imagining a world.
Yeah. Go on, pretend like say you know what would have happened.
It's as though this. But I don't have to pretend, my brother. It was literally said. This is the point, right? You're actually getting het up about something that was not in fact said. But
you brought up Diop. So why you bring up Diop about
just the possibility of it? Just the possibility of exploring the idea, has incensed you to the point where you've made it the focal point of your statement. When it wasn't that point in the
wasn't opposed to the exploring of the idea. I was opposed to it.
Point is, so okay, what answer was given to the question, my brother?
To the question of what Africa would be?
Yes, what answer was given to the question?
Well, you draw for Diop's book, Black Africa.
Huh? To say what?
To suggest that would have been the natural course of evolution. Whatever Diop says African culture, as opposed to cultures, is the so-called cultural unity of Africa. That would have been the continuity after. And I am saying, somebody like Diop cannot.
Nobody said that.
The amount of well, why you bring in Diop book then? Because
you said that. Is you supposed to tell we what him said?
Hold on, brother, man. I brought in the fact that in order to answer that question, we would have to understand the context of what medieval Africa was like at the point before those
and
things
even
happened.
That information not going to give you the answer because there's so many variables at play.
Listen, he actually already said that that's an impossible question.
Him bring up the books we try come and we're kind of crystal ball.
Hold on. This is the point, right? This is the hilarity of this dynamic at the moment, because nobody actually attempted to answer the question.
Nobody.
Right?
Nobody answer.
that. Hold on, hold on.
Okay,
Right,
okay,
hold
you
on,
didn't.
hold on. All that
Oh,
was
oh,
said,
that's why
all
you
that was
bring
said,
me up in the
all
conversation.
that was
I
said,
just
all that was said.
explained why Diop was brought into the
I
conversation.
know
Please don't be facetious, bro.
the point is, yes, Diop was brought into the conversation, but why that bothers you so much is very interesting. Yeah,
Because you can't predict based on what Diop write about
No
African
one made a
culture.
prediction, though. No one made a prediction.
No one made a prediction.
So
But
what would be the purpose of the question then?
hold on.
What would be the purpose of the question then?
Hold on.
What's the
Or the
purpose of your
assumption?
response?
Sorry, you can't make an assumption, I should say. You're right.
What if we wanted to spend the next 2 hours pontificating and extrapolating and envisioning what that might have looked like? What if we wanted to do that? Why does that bother you so much? That is the question. Why is that such a thing? Yeah, for you.
Why do you think that bothers me?
I'm asking
you, man. Are you clairvoyant? You're mind
you
reader?
bring it up, but is you bring it up?
Me bring up what?
I'm asking
me bring up what Africa would look like if there was no second contact.
Why does the exploration of that question bother you to that
Why
extent?
do you think it bothers me, Mr. Obiaman?
You said I'm not supposed
You're reading my mind?
Right? No, I'm asking you a question. It's the opposite of my
It don't bother me. It not bother me. That not tell you, it not bother me.
Hold on. So answer. No, Kofi, since it doesn't bother you, how about you give an answer? Let's pontificate on it a little bit. What would you think it would look like? No, it don't bother you. Hold on, it don't bother you. Hold on, it don't bother you. So give me an answer. What would Africa look like without the second contact? It don't bother you. Answer.
So if you were listening instead of smoking the weed like Brother Trini,
so you're not going to answer?
You would have heard.
Are you going to answer?
You would have heard me say. You would have heard me say that you cannot say with any certainty.
I'm asking you for an answer, though. I'm not asking for you to say that we cannot say.
There cannot be an answer.
So you cannot imagine. You have no imagination.
We can assume, but there can be no answer with certainty. So you can't draw it.
I'm not saying for you to have certainty. I'm just asking, could you imagine something and just say what it looks like?
Melo, we're going a little bit too far.
I agree, though. We cannot imagine Africa.
I could imagine.
Europeans from slavery and colonization to the same extent.
When you ask me a question.
Go on.
When you ask me a question.
Go on.
I could imagine Africa going through the same so-called reevaluation and revolution of values like Europe went through in terms of viewing the individual as an end in
So you have a crystal ball then. So now you have the crystal ball and he's the crystal ball man now, right? He's the crystal ball man now. You see, it's so easy, right? It's so easy. You fall right into it. You have a crystal ball now.
But because
stop smoke the weed. Stop. If you never did smoke the weed, you just see the trap. You just see the trap if you never did smoke the weed. You understand now?
But because there's so many variables. But because there's so many variables.
Yeah, if you smoke the weed, yeah. We'll get clairvoyant and see the thing.
But well, if you never jump in, then you'd hear me finish. But because there are so many variables, I cannot say with any certainty what Africa would look like. And drawing for ShakaRa there is useless. Is worse than useless. That may I say. But you see, on smoke too much weed, so no one know.
From there, bro.
Okay. By the way, it's in a free market. Yeah, we should be allowed to smoke weed without ridicule. These things,
no, free market means people are free to view them up.
Right? Free up the herbs. Free up the herbs.
Yeah, free up the herbs, but I free to say is
free market for the herbs. How about the place? Free market for the herbs, free market for the uranium, yeah, free market for the gold, the diamond, the copper. You know what I'm saying? Free market for the coltan, yeah, free market for the banana. You know what I mean? Yeah, free market, we say. All right. But by the way, I happen to agree though that we cannot envisage Africa without the incursion of slavery and colonialism to the same extent that we can't envisage Europe and the development of capitalism without slavery and colonialism. You know what I'm saying? You know, it's impossible to do. So yeah. And with that, brothers and sisters, I was gonna close on some more Nana Amos Wilson, but we'll close it less so. So give thanks, brethren and sisters, for coming through. You know what I'm saying? And no doubt we'll reason a little more, yeah, in the forward. All right, give thanks. To close, I do want to say this, and maybe I will do a bit more Amos Wilson. But we have to be mindful of how people. So power is the capacity to define phenomena and have it act in a desired manner. Yeah. And so systems of power, especially those that are designed and have the intention of exploitation, like to define what matters in a conversation and what doesn't matter in a conversation. All right? Because what you choose to consider and choose not to consider has a direct impact upon the conclusions that you're going to come to. So this system, yeah, that we live under has certain assumptions within it that we have to accept for it to maintain itself, like all systems. All right. And we had an example of that in the conversation today when we are talking about how our ancestors were classified in enslavement. And during that time, it was well known that we were classified as not human, dehumanized, considered to be property, and the social order, the political order, the economic order related to us in that way. And then when them said them free we, yes, they still did not afford us the status of human beings enough. If humanity and freedom was about access to the market, yes, the society, the political and economic order didn't consider us to be human beings enough to grant access to that market. If it did, that which was gifted to enslavers for loss of property would have been gifted to Africans for as compensation at the very least for unpaid labor. But the definer of the system would like you to pay attention to a narrative which says the economic order that they favor is the one that brought about our freedom, not our rebellion against, enslavement and so on. Okay. And so therefore it doesn't matter. Yeah, this is what was told, right? When it was said that the reparation was granted to the enslaver, not to the enslaved or the formerly enslaved. So we weren't considered human enough to be engaged in the market in that kind of way. That doesn't matter. Because if you take that piece of information into consideration, it begins to make a lie of the fact, of the idea, I should say, that our freedom as human beings is to be found within the context of this particular economic order. Okay? The world in which we live, as Papa Garvey said, is organized in terms of race and nationality. Yeah? The same people that promote the individualist idea also promote concepts such as British values. Okay? British values is not an individualist designation. It's impossible. Britain is a nation, the United Kingdom of Great Britain. American exceptionalism. American exceptionalism is not the manifestation of an individual consciousness, behavior, thought process. It is the collective consciousness through which America promotes itself to the world and justifies its domination of the global geopolitical order. And the point that Nana Amos Wilson is making is that there are people who exercise group power. There is a thing in this world called the geopolitical West. The West. And those who are a part of that geopolitical formation have a vested interest in sustaining FIDEM power as a group of people, a collective of nations. They have governments, they formulate institutions, including militaries, for the purpose of imposing FIDEM power upon the world. And unless we're mistaken about this, FIDEM power includes the acceptance of their political and economic systems. No, democracy and free market capitalism were not gifts to the world granted via charity and benevolence. They were imposed on the world through violence and coercion. Literal violence and coercion. And that is free market capitalism in name, because in actuality, the free market does not and has never existed. Yeah. So when we're talking about our capacity to withstand colonial propaganda, the example was given, I come from a strong family unit. I do. Well, depends on how you look on it. My father never married my mother. Yeah. I come from a broken family unit by some designations because my parents never stayed together. I come from a blended family unit by other designations because at least one of my parents went on to marry. And so on. So that depends on what you define as strong. However, there are many brothers and sisters my age who came from similar family situations, and some were less broken than mine, that were given similar education. And not all of them are doing what I am doing. Not all of them can be said to have rejected the neo-colonial propaganda. Not all of them. I was not only raised in a good family, I was raised in an organization. And that organization was a part of a community of organizations and individuals, because not everybody was a part of an organization. Well, I should say people that were members of organization and supporters of organization that were operating in this communal context. And not every tool that I was given to be able to reject the propaganda of colonization and white supremacy was granted to me by my family in my home. Many of those tools were granted to me by the community. And everybody who was able to break those shackles, broke those shackles as a result of the work of Africans in community. Marcus Garvey never dropped from sky. Umbuya Nahanda never dropped from sky. Omawale Malcolm X never dropped from sky. Martin Delaney never dropped from sky. Cecile Fatiman never dropped from sky. Asata Shakur never dropped from sky. Yes, because organizations actively engage the community on the level of services, goods, political education. We are dealing with organized systems. Papa Garvey teaches us about the value of institutions and the fact that nothing can be done in society within the absence of institutions. And so it is advisable for Africans to be concerned with developing an institutional life. And the idea and the point of what Nana Amos Wilson was saying is that these people, with all of their agreements, disagreements, variations, are able to organize institutionally to actualize, manifest, and impose their power in a world whereby they encourage us to act as individuals. And that dynamic, the reason for it is obvious. It is obvious that those who have a vested interest in maintaining the force of their collective power and don't want an opposition have a vested interest in convincing those who might become an opposition not to organize in said kinds of ways. You have an army, you don't want me to have an army, therefore you demonize the concept of army in relation to me, whilst having your own army and employing the uses of it everywhere else in the world. Yeah. So this is what we have to understand. And some of us are so caught up in protecting the wealth of white capitalists from revolutionary Africans, because it's not our own wealth we're protecting the wealth of white capitalists, that we are going to propagandize rabid individualism to African people, knowing full well that the people them who we are protecting exert and use collective power. It's the reason why Papa Garvey was said race first. It's the reason why Papa Garvey taught us to organize. So we now are going to go into a corporation with a collective interest. Yeah, the corporation has collective interests, but we're going to engage the corporation as individuals. Why? Because the corporation is better able to exploit our labor if our interest is individually our own, separate and distinct from the other laborers. There's another side to this, which is that, for example, the colonizer has a vested interest in the colonized African, from nation to nation, seeing ourselves as citizens of that nation with no relation to the other, because that makes us better able to exploit on behalf of the colonizer. Yeah. But we're going to promote the idea of the individual as though it's some virtue. It doesn't actually exist. Anyway, we could done this. So yeah, make it done this. So there is no liberation for African people outside of the context of organization, family. Yeah, we are not going to overcome the imposition of the power. And this is I'm going to say this. I'm not talking long here, but this is one thing that came to my mind. Yeah. The other side to this is the negation of the actual reality that we exist within. Okay. So we must chart our development and course from here in the absence of a real cogent analysis of what is taking place in our current reality. In other words, we must proceed with the assumption that the free market exists in order to justify the idea that our liberation simply comes from engagement in the free market. We must engage in the idea that society is just a random conglomeration of individual interests as to justify the idea that liberation is about just pursuing our individual interests as opposed and rejecting and negating our group interest. And in many ways being hostile to even the concept or the idea of a group interest. We must proceed on the basis of the fact that trade, and not even trade in general, you know, trade with Europeans, yeah, is a prerequisite for development in order to justify the idea that we cannot tamper with our economic relationship with European or Western nation states. So the moment we identify those relationships as exploitative, the moment we begin to question their necessity, you see. Yeah. And that's what them don't want. You cannot challenge the basic assumptions of the system of power that you exist within if that system of power is going to maintain itself. Okay. So we have to bear those things in mind. All right. And because Nana Amos Wilson I carry the spirit of the thing, we'll go close with a little more Amos Wilson. 10-9 Wadi. Be thankful unto the Mother, Father, creative life force of the universe, because Zai Muzimu Mukuru. Give praises unto our great ancestors, Abibi Tumi, Abibi Fa Ho, the African power and African liberation for all African people. Ashe, Ashe, Ashe.
Of the capitalist economic system, and as a result of that system itself. Let me go back with this. Those people who talk about individualism and privatized consumption and going only for themselves are not really expressing individualism. They have internalized the strongest social and group ideology of all. In other words, it is the ideology of isolated individualism. It is the ideology of unconstrained consumption, consumption unrelated to group purpose and ends, consumption unrelated to community, that is the most communal of ideologies, because it does what? Maintains whom? The white community. You see? In other words, as I've said, we got to be backwards again. In expressing our so-called individuality as Black people, we have been duped to the greater extent, and we are acting most within a group concept, because it is that concept imposed upon the oppressed that maintains the power of the oppressor and is the source of the oppressor's wealth and of his power. That is why the more you spend unrelated to community ends and unrelated to community purpose, the poorer we get. The more oppressed we become. The more unemployed we become, you see. The idea of individualized consumption, unconnected to community, is one of the most political and economical ideas we can engage in. That's why we have to look at it very closely. And that's why the more individualized you become in your consumption, the more disconnected you become in your behavior and attitudes, the more, as I said earlier, we will feel the brunt of oppression, and the more the power of others will increase over us. We are not going to spend ourselves out of oppression and by giving our money to our oppressors. The right to spend money anywhere, any place, is not an expression of freedom, but really a part of enchaining ourselves ever more closely to our oppressive conditions. So looking at these facts and looking at the fact that our fundamental conditions have not changed, that we've actually gotten worse in many instances, we begin to question this philosophy, not that we hadn't been questioning it all along, but we had people with this other ideology overlaying us, and by us, I'm talking about nationalists. Black nationalism reasserted its influence as Afrocentrism, placed new demands on the social system and on all Black Americans. These demands stimulated, and this is what's going on here. Why are we all of a sudden having crisis in identity? At the very moment, we also talked about what? Afrocentrism and African what? Centeredness. People who already have more than they know what to do with. We finance the children of other groups, and then we wonder why our own engage in thievery and other forms of misbehavior. In a sense, then, we create it. We also see a situation here with the changing demographics of this country, the need of this country to what I call Anglo-Saxonize the Black middle class, to make honorary Blacks as a means of maintaining their position and their power and their wealth when they are no longer even a majority in the United States. To create a neoconservative Black class to reward its neoconservatism and move the society from racism to classism. So all of a sudden, this society is not going to be so much based on race as it is on class. That should make the Marxists happy. You know, now we can talk about class because these neo-honorary Blacks now become a part of the middle class and the upper ruling class, even though they are not. The Black middle class and the Black upper class is a subordinate class. It is an underclass. What did I say about this distinction? Because these two classes still don't own anything in this country worth a nickel. They don't. So looking at these facts and looking at the fact that our fundamental conditions have not changed, that we've actually gotten worse in many instances, we begin to question this philosophy, not that we hadn't been questioning it all along, but we had people with this other ideology overlaying us, and by us, I'm talking about nationalists. Black nationalism reasserted its influence as Afrocentrism, placed new demands on the social system and on all Black Americans. These demands stimulated, and this is what's going on here. Why are we all of a sudden having crisis in identity? At the very moment, we also talked about what? Afrocentrism and African what? Centeredness. So right at this moment, when we are beginning to coalesce and to develop a concept of African identity and Afrocentrism, we are all now suddenly in a what? Identity crisis. Is the identity crisis really there? or is what going on in attempt to do what? Create an identity crisis. Because these people are well aware of what a full and wholesome identity will do to them. And they are aware that an African-centered identity represents the end of white power and of white oppression. That's why I've told you time and time again,
every year in the month of May, we chant liberation. We gather every year in the month of May, 'cause we are one black nation. And we celebrate all our victory and prepare for each new fight. We vanquish all down pressure, whether black, yellow, brown or white. 'Cause black struggle international in this year time, and we want liberation now. After we struggle, I want in North America, me say we want liberation now. After we struggle, I want in the Caribbean, me say we want liberation now. After we struggle, I want in Canada, me say we want liberation now. After we struggle, I want in South America, me say we want liberation now. After we struggle, I want in Europe, me say we want liberation now. After we struggle, I want in Britain, man, me say we want liberation now. After we struggle, I want in Asia, me say we want liberation now. After we struggle, I want in Australia, me say we want liberation now. And so we trot down the road and it a cause sensation. Behind the colors of the new black nation, I step into the valleys in the shadow of the wicked, just a chant liberation. Tell it to the nation, what we want to see is Africa strong and free. We sing it in a reggae song all the time. Say what is to be has got to be. Africa shall be free. Who are we? Africans. What do we want? Freedom. And we say, how do we get it? Fight. We must fight to defend the truth and defend the right. Mr. Africa. Liberation Day. The true black spirit is here to stay. Before this power, no one life is here. Freedom come, what me? Freedom come, what me? And the white them who were standing by were watching fearful, wondering, saying, who are these people who walk so proud? Who are these people who chant so loud? Are these not they who live in darkness and to whom we have given light? Are these not the sons and daughters of the savage who we have taught to read and write? Have we not taught them our history and honor them with our culture? And brought them into our great house to serve and stand at our great table. Have we not granted them what they deserve? Well, African proverbs say that only those who can listen can learn, and who can hear go and feel. We are the sheep of Jah pasture, and now we shall inherit our land. And we are also the lion, against who none shall stand. We are the sons and daughters of the original nation that gave to this world first knowledge of civilization. We were the victim of the white savage to who we stretch out our hand, and not knowing they came to plunder, kill and slave our people and destroy our land. So now we step it down the road and it a cause sensation behind the colors of the new black nation and a one chance liberation. And we say, who are we? Africans. What do we want? Freedom. And we say, how do we get it? Fight. We must fight. We defend the truth and defend the right. This is Africa Liberation Day. A true black spirit is here to stay. We bow this power, no one life this day. Freedom come, what me? A freedom come, what me? A freedom come, what me?